they can figure that.
Hi Sam, can you hear us okay?
So pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, everyone. We could have roll call, please.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Smith,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Valentine,
Here.
Trustee Check. Present. Trustee Heck,
Here.
Trustee Hunter,
Here.
Trustee Smelter, and Trustee Schwartz.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda unless anyone has any suggestions for the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
We have a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Announcements, I'm going to turn it over to Trustee Schwartz for your announcements and then I'll proceed with others.
Okay, so, hi all, we have a lot of appreciations and good news. Let's see, first of all, thanks, and these all come from the community. Thanks to Thomas Waldo owners, Tina and Angie, for organizing the fundraiser to help 2 local families in need, and all the businesses for donating to the raffle. And thanks to everyone who participated. Thanks to my neighbor for shoveling my sidewalks when I was sick. Also wanted the sidewalk lined. Thanks to everyone and all the businesses who shoveled their sidewalks in a timely manner so they don't get icy. I so appreciate Peonia Espresso for making me the best cup of coffee to start the day. Thanks to my friend for covering kid duty while I had jury duty. This one got 2 things from 2 different people. Thanks to Dave for playing music at the pub on Tuesdays. He's a big hit. Thanks to Laurel and Heather for welcoming me home. Thanks to Cause and all the volunteers. Thanks to Addie, who found Tiger and returned him after he got scared and ran away. And Tiger's a dog, not a tiger. The fireworks, lots of props for the fireworks in town on New Year's Eve. Thanks to Sid for keeping my hair looking so good. Hungry Bird Pizza, they always got 2 nominations, right? Another person said, I'm so appreciative my friend just got a really great job. Another person said, thanks Peonia for being so dog friendly and the dogs in town are the best. Thanks for everyone who have supported Wild to Spiral. I appreciate you. This is the person's business. And then we got shout outs to, thanks to Public Works for repairing the water leak last Wednesday at 2 a.m. Imagine how cold that was going to be. And then finally, thanks to our police department for responding with such care for all the recent incidents and accidents. So lots of love and Peonia, a lot of gratitude. And yeah, that's what I have for you tonight. So thank you all.
Thank you. Rounding those up.
My announcement is we have two openings. One is for, there's an opening on the tree board. Paula Martin, who's been a longtime member, has resigned. And we will need a member on the tree board. And the tree board meets the third Tuesday of the month, if I recall, in here. And you can get a form from the town clerk online and submit a letter of interest. And the clerk would like to see those by January 22nd at 12:30. And then we have another opening, and we still are trying to fill a seat on the Zoning Board of Adjustments. ZBOA only meets when a public hearing is scheduled. Applications and a letter of interest are due to the town clerk by January 22nd at 12:30, but you could call the town clerk to get more information on both of those boards. Thank you. So this is the part of the agenda where we open the floor for public comment for anybody who would like to come up and speak for 3 minutes on something that is not on the agenda. And if you're interested in coming up, just raise your hand. I'll recognize you and have you come up. And I'll ask you to give us your name and whether you live in town or out of town. So do we have anybody in the room or on Zoom that's interested in speaking? Yes, I see a hand. Come on up, Suzanne.
Suzanne Watson. You just reminded me, I meant to write something, but I forgot, didn't have time. Zoning Board of Adjustment, I only got on last fall because you had the need for a member from the Planning Commission. There was something coming up and it never happened, so I'm resigning my seat on Zoning Board of Adjustment since it wasn't necessary, it sounds like. And I only said it was going to be temporary for that event until you found someone else. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the room would like to speak on a subject not on the agenda? And I don't see any hands up on Zoom, is that right? Okay, all right, we will move on to the consent agenda. So we have several things on there. We have the December 10th meeting minutes, a liquor license, a hotel bed and breakfast liquor license renewal for the Ross Hotel. We have the December 20th disbursements, which I have a form for everybody to sign, and then we have the latest January 14th disbursements as part of that consent agenda. And something I would like to bring up before I open it to any questions. I may potentially be gone the Friday of the week and would not be here to do the disbursements review. So I'm just putting that out there so that we can find administrator when, if there's somebody else that can take my place. And this is all weather dependent. I've signed up for a meeting in Denver, but if the weather's bad, I won't go. But I'll know by the beginning of the week if I'll be here or not. So I just want to put that out there because the public knows where we have to find a substitute for me to go over disbursements with Trustee Schwartz. Okay, questions on disbursements or comments? Trustee Hunter?
I just had a quick question on disbursements. This is for the trash truck repair.
Can you say what page you're on?
28 and 29 of the packet.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm looking at the 615 for ProTech and then the 705 for Trans West. Just want to be sure that that's accurate and accounted for.
So one of them is for hard and the other one is for
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Trustee Schwartz?
I just have a few comments. The first of all, starting with the January disbursements, town is now entering statements in. So if we get a statement from Farm and Home or Dependable, instead of it being itemized by like 50 different things, it's just going to stay one statement. It's going to save staff a ton of time for entry. And then on the Finance Committee, we review every single item to make sure it matches. But you will not see all of like, okay, if it's Dependable, all 50 individual parts that may be 99 cents or $2, et cetera. The second thing, and this is something I'd like Town Administrator Wynn to explain, is there are 3 disbursements that say cell phone town rent. Can you just explain that for the public?
Yes, so this is for the cell phone tower up on P Hill. We collect a rent from that cell company, and then we disperse it to heirs of the people that donated the land. So they get a portion of that rent. We keep a portion, but then we have to cut a check for those remaining heirs.
Thanks for describing that. Those are questions that I had, so I thought it was helpful for the public to hear.
Anything else? I'd like to make a motion.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Valentine, are you in on that?
Aye.
Thank you. And now we will turn it over to the town administrator's report.
Okay, so this is the fourth quarter of 24 report. This encompasses October, November, and December. And then also, the beginning of this report is also our ending fund balances for fiscal year 24. I put this together on January 11th, so I couldn't go through and get the actuals from the bank accounts as of December 31st. So that's why you see the actuals in here. We're still pretty healthy. Our fund, like our investments, have gone down. They were about 5.4% monthly yields. They're now down to 4.6%. This is going to fluctuate every month, so we'll probably see above 5% again, hopefully in the next couple of months. But we're still generating a lot of income on our investments. If you remember, this is also, I think, the second month that you'll see a new Colo Trust investment account specifically for water. And that's that last 8005. And it has seen some interest as well. This is an updated grant tracking sheet that will now hopefully have a few more things added. If we hear back from RAISE for federal grant and then another tier 2 EIF grant for the Western Loop Replacement Project, Water Capital Improvement Phase 1. I am happy to report that the Water Smart grant that we were awarded, we finally have a finished contract, so it's a fully executed contract. The application process was pretty intense to even get that grant awarded to us. The contract part was even more intense. And so that took months to complete of back and forth between here, state offices, and then federal offices, including DC.
Remind us how much that was for.
$250,000. But we finally have that grant. We have submitted another Water Smart grant as well for projects. So this is more planning based. The next one that we're applying for is another $250,000 for projects, water meter replacements. So that's coming. We're pretty hopeful. I also have submitted our USDOT grant, that Federal Highway Safe Streets for All grant. That actual contract is now in DC awaiting signatures. So hopefully these things can get done and we can start more projects this year. I want to go through where we are with our revenue. At the end of 24, we have a net surplus, and this will fluctuate because we have a month 13. It's our catch-all for invoices that were generated in December that are yet to be paid. And so once they do catch through, they'll be paid within sometime in January. And they'll be this final number will probably go down. But as of right now, we have a net surplus in the general fund. If you remember the last month that I reported in November, it was actually for the end of October, we were looking like a deficit. But we didn't get our last sales tax revenue in yet. We finally got it. So we're okay.
Can I stop you just a second?
Sure.
So the sales tax from the county,
Mhm.
We budgeted for 260,000, it's 157,000 and change. So everything is in now.
It is.
And that 260 was not contemplating the back-to-batch tax money.
That's correct. That is also in here, broken out as, it does contemplate that. But we added a code to track it. We wanted to be able to track that revenue better as it came in. and that is under 103404. And we received 211,000.
So we actually exceeded the
Exceeded.
county
Correct.
budget amount of 260,000 by, what sounds like over 100,000.
We did.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, no problem.
Do we expect the sales tax for state marijuana to increase? Since we're about 75% short.
We don't. So not only do we see, so we budget, if you remember, in our fiscal year 25 budgeting process, we budgeted for way less. We think we're plateauing, even though we have a third shop open, we think that revenue is going to plateau. We were a little more conservative in our estimates. And then 103111, that marijuana occupational tax, that's that pot for potholes, the $5. You can see what we actually brought in compared to what we budgeted. And when you look at this for the last three or 4 years, it has steadily declined. We think that this is going to be the plateau about 90,000 a year, even with another shop. So we have to look at some market factors, like Hotchkiss opened up 2 more shops that they didn't have before. So revenue generation is going down. Each department was pretty spot on. I came in under budget, but 100% realized because it's like 99.8%. For the admin department, that is not just me, it's the clerk's office, the finance office, that stuff. Law enforcement came in below budget, so they were about 91%. Building came in below budget, 77%. This in the fiscal year 25 budget changed drastically to where everything is within that legal engineering professional services line item, since we outsource our inspector and our plan review and our building official. We don't have those in-house.
Before you move on, did our revenue cover the cost of our building?
That's something that gets figured out as part of the end of year stuff, and then we generate invoices. I don't know. We're not there yet. Once we do know, if we are missing something, invoices will be sent out to people that had building permits. Let's see, streets was way under budget, but this contemplated actually having a construction project in 24. That's that 5th and Grand that's going into next year. But generally we were under budget for most of it. Water came in pretty close. So we did see a net income of just shy of 50,000, which isn't where we really need to be. So that's why utility rates had to increase, especially when we're taking on an $11 million loan. That application is in. The reason wastewater is high, remember we got a grant for Doris Avenue that came in 24 instead of 23. That booked to 24. Sanitation is higher, which is good. But we adjusted things in 25 so that fixed allocation salaries and insurances are being paid out of this fund proportionately like the other. We didn't do any spending in the airport, but we brought in revenue. So, but in 25, we are budgeted to do a significant engineering for apron repairs. Okay, my actual report. So this is, it was the end of the 4th quarter. So I threw a bunch of different pictures in. But 5th and Grand update. So this is where we're at with 5th and Grand. We have started our TCE, temporary construction easements. They're almost done, if not already filed. We have already received our utility clearances, and SGM is coordinating that utility work with Black Hills, DMEA, Elevate, things like that. We still have a couple of grants that we're waiting to hear back from. Safe Routes to School, where we asked for $1 million, and also a federal raise grant. If we get those, the amount that we budgeted to come out of our reserves or surplus to cover this project won't be as hard hit. But either way, this project is fully funded in 25.
Could you remind us when is estimated construction to begin?
This spring.
Okay, thank you.
So you'll see a competitive bid go out. We'll get it on an agenda here in the next couple months. Water capital improvement plan phase 1. So we do have a number of tier 2 grants that we have either received or we've applied for, totaling about $1,956,000. Project cost though for this, for all three pieces of phase one is just shy of $11 million. The good news is that since we are considered a disadvantaged community, we do qualify for principal loan forgiveness up to $3 million. So that is a restriction that they put on it. I think it was unrestricted, and now we're at $3 million, which is good news. And if we get that's good. But knowing that we still have another $19 million in loans to take out for phases 2 and 3. Our next steps for our water tank, they're on the agenda tonight. And I messed up on this one for next steps 3. It should say continue coordination with DOLA and CDPHE, not CDOT. So the Department of Public Health and Environment instead of the Department of Transportation. But our next steps are we're waiting. We have something on the agenda for site work that we're trying to get done this winter so that we're ready in the spring to put our temporary tank in and start that rehabilitation project. It is both an interior and an exterior refinishing of our 2 million gallon water tank. Sandblasting outside, dry ice blasting on the inside. And then you'll see that competitive bid project come in on a future agenda for the actual work. This is a big one that we've been working on, Western Loop replacement project. This is the lion's share of what we're taking a loan out for. It is the main distribution line from our water plant that services every connection in town. So somehow this pipe, every service somehow gets water from it. That's my understanding. It is replacing a 9-inch steel pipe that's about 70 years old with 12-inch PVC pipe. So we're going to have more storage capacity within that pipe. And it's going to plastic, something that is a state industry standard. Hopefully that the orange water everyone talks about sees will go away once this project's completed. Our next steps for this, once we secure this loan, like I said, the loan application is in. Once we secure this loan and we get an award, this project will be fully funded. We budgeted for it this year. I have no indication on why we wouldn't be awarded the loan. I've been working with CDPHE to make sure that their questions are answered. And DOLA sounds like they're backing this project as well. So at least writing the support things for these applications. We're over 95% engineered with final design work, which includes the preparation for the basis of design report. Since this report was written, it is finished and has been submitted. So we do have that VDR into the loan application portal. We're still waiting on final permits from CDPHE and right-of-way, but that's going to be completed in the coming months so that we're ready to go for competitive bid and then start breaking ground in the spring. This project is going to go on through 26. There's no way around it. It's almost 2 miles of pipe replacement. So I would be shocked if it finished before the end of this year. And then the final one is our raw water metering project. This is separate from what you're going to hear later in the presentation from Right Engineering, or Right Water Engineering.
You got it.
Yeah. So that's the hydrogeological study that they're working on, where they do have 2 meters that really transducers, right, that are going into spring boxes. They'll talk more about that. What this is for is actually actual meters that also look at temperature. So not just flow and but also temperature. That's a requirement that we have to keep, I guess, for raw water for reporting. So it's going to look at that kind of stuff and then do some spring box rehabilitation informed by their project. So we're only like about 60% complete with this. It's still under design. This will probably, I really wish it would go out in 25. There's a chance that it would end up going out for bid in 26. Yeah. Total estimated cost for projects between raw water metering improvements, it's about $584,000. The 2 million gallon tank relining is about $2.1 million. Western Loop water line replacement is about $5.4 million. Overall, with contingencies, construction management and engineering, construction engineering inspections, we're looking at a total project cost of $10.8 million. That's why we're going for an $11 million loan in case there's more things we find underground that we haven't anticipated. We can still draw down from that loan. Okay, strategic planning and budgeting. So this is stuff that was in that budget, in our fiscal year 25 budget. I pulled it out of there so that you could see that we truly finally have a strategic plan. So when we're considering making purchases, or the board is considering making purchases, if we can align it with the strategic plan, then we're doing something right. You have identified, these are the goals that we want to see. This is the service delivery levels that we want to provide. And I think it's really important for people to see. So not just in a budget, but also in somewhere where, in a report. I think having a fund structure was pretty important. Our general fund is made up of not just the taxes the tax revenue in our general fund doesn't just go to general fund, but it's broken up for special revenue funds. And having those special revenue funds listed out, I think is important for everyone to understand how complex our budgeting process can be. It's not like a business where if I want to spend more on employees, I just sell more widgets. We've got a budget that we have to follow every year. And then there are proprietary funds, water, sewer, trash. Those are funds that can operate like a business. Our strategic plan goes into these. I won't go through everything because it is available online. You've seen it many times before. But we have 5 different goals that we're really trying to attain: organizational excellence and staff development, pristine infrastructure and critical facilities, transparent, secure, and accurate financial administrative systems, communication and records management, safe and resilient community. So using our strategic plan to fund these different things, I think is going to be helpful for us moving forward. And then it gets broken down, but that is, there's still one more piece. So I am on the statewide policy committee for the Colorado Municipal League. Sam, the town clerk, is my alternate. So we are always represented on the statewide level for initiatives that are coming forward. I've included the agenda and then the items that are up for discussion. There are some things that we see as eroding we're not home rule, but eroding city and towns' right to govern themselves, that the CML Policy League and staff are saying we should probably oppose. Some of those things are like electronic fence detection systems. I mean, that's a House Bill 25-1060. There are things that are in here that we collaborate with other municipalities across the state to make sure that we're represented in the State House. Any questions if you have them?
No. Trustee Valentine, any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. With that, we will move on to Chief Laminger's report.
So the police department compiled basically just some data from 2024, and I'll share that. The police department wrote 881 reports. Those vary for services, what we call them, get called out. Those can be anything from a bin inspection, which we would write a report on, to a death investigation, which we would also write a report. We saw an increase in the number of citizen assists and civil calls we responded to. Those could be anything from evictions and property removal, as well as misplaced keys, vehicles, jump starting, things like that. That's good to see that number increasing. What we found is those citizen assists, a lot more people are likely to call us. That's good. If you lost something, if you can't find something, if you need help, if you got a dead battery, whatever it may be, call us. We can help you out. We're glad to do that. That shows a good relationship with the community. In 24, we also saw a reduction in crimes against people that include assaults, domestic violence. Also, that's a very good trend. We like to see that. Property crimes stayed about even across the board. Trespasses about the same. We had one individual who kind of greatly impacted some of those numbers with repeated contacts over and over and over. you remove that one individual contacts and big kind of changes some of those trespass and assaults that get out. The one thing I will touch on is we saw a significant increase in traffic accidents and infractions. Throughout the summer, officers were indicating to me that they were seeing just a lot more traffic volume in town. It's had a lot of people in town. And that translated to people coming into town parking, and then we had foot traffic, we had bicycle traffic, just people in general in the area. And our statistics are kind of showing that. The one troubling sign is that our accidents increased. In 2023, we only had 8 traffic accidents inside city limits. In 2024, we were up to 23. So those include anything from disregarding a stop sign when we have an accident to hit and runs, to people sliding off the road, ditch, turn their vehicle over. But generally speaking, those accidents are increasing. This year, we've already had 1. Some of the other factors that are contributing to that are some of our DUI statistics. In 2023, we had 1 DUI. In 2024, we had 7, and this year we already have 3 through the first 2 weeks of the year. So while officers are looking for those and we have DUI enforcement, just the number of vehicles we're stopping that are indicating that maybe driving a vehicle has gone up pretty significantly. I'll also point out that these stats include 1 officer who was on light duty for 6 months, who was not able to leave the office. So we're looking forward to having full staff on patrol, conducting more stops. Last year, the police department conducted 716 traffic stops. That's quite a few contacts for a town our size, with a population of 1,500. That's a lot of people to talk to. Not all those people receive citations, but a lot of those are warnings. A lot of those are explained to people. Some of our parking restrictions, directions, things like that that we do allow and don't allow. But generally speaking, from a crime standpoint, it's trending the right way. But for drivers, everybody kind of works together. Pay attention, put your phones down, turn off all the screens. Officers are indicating a lot of these new vehicles have just a tremendous amount of tech and there's screens everywhere being projected onto the windows, steering wheel controls, all over. So just trying to pay attention to what we have going on and watch out for each other.
Chief, January 1st, the cell phone, no cell phones in hands went into effect as well.
Yeah, you're supposed to use a hands-free device. That's a secondary infraction. But if you are pulled over for not using a turn signal and the officer also observed that you were manipulating your device in your hands, that can also be an infraction. The hands-free devices are very helpful.
That's a state statute.
Use those if you know.
Thank you. Do you have any idea? Is it maybe the drop in speed limit might be the reason for so many stops?
Not generally for stops. Some of our stops are resulting in speed. But a lot of our stops, particularly when the speed limits went into place, most of those resulted in warnings. That was kind of what we pushed out to people when we had stop signs at the speed limits. We were going to be giving out a lot of warnings, which we did. Again, a lot of our stops are looking at the initial results. A lot of our stops are people within out of town areas. That's a lot of our traffic stops, and that's partially them not being familiar with the area. Signage is an issue sometimes, as I'm sure we can all, kind of attest to when you're in a new area and you're looking for something, you may not be paying attention to how the streets are laid out, where you're going, and what the speed limits are. So, I really at this point, based on what my guys are telling me and what we're seeing on the reports and in the reports they're writing, it's just a traffic volume. We just have a lot of people in town, particularly starting in the spring through the fall. There's a lot of traffic in town.
Thank you. Any other questions from trustees for the chief? Okay. Thank you very much for that report. We'll now turn to our actions and presentations, and our first is a presentation from Marshall and Jonathan from Wright Water Engineers on the geophysical study, hydrogeologic study, going on. So it's all yours.
Would you like us at the podium or do you have a
I think
preference?
whatever you're comfortable with. I'm thinking maybe if you're comfortable there,
Yeah.
so your back isn't to
Right.
the audience, because I think they like to see as much as, hear you as well as we can. Thank you.
Excellent.
Oh, yeah, sure, sorry. So this is Wright Water Engineers. They are our hydrogeological engineers. So they, this is Jonathan Kelly and Marshall Hayworth. Right? Haworth. Okay, sorry. I almost Marshall. They are completing that hydrogeological study. Marshall went up, I don't know if you went with them, but Marshall went up to our spring system and camped out for a week or two.
It certainly felt like it.
But anyway, they've been doing excellent work, got a lot of drone footage, which you'll see in, I mean, these are actual pictures from our spring network.
So would you like a podium to stand next to? Are you okay
I
right
just
now?
wanted to.
Yep.
I think this is great. So, I got, you got control. You want me to talk on this? Yeah, okay. So I just kind of want to do a little brief recap of kind of where we got to this point. So it started with the town's 2019 water crisis, where there was just a state of the tap moratorium. And so we were contacted with Respect Engineering, who have been helping out with asset inventory, water modeling, distribution system, and staffing issues within Public Works Department. And so one of the key findings that Respect indicated was we need to do a hydrogeologic study on our well water system. It's in a high alpine environment. These springs are have been known about and maybe briefly evaluated, but nothing in terms of an in-depth study. So there was a lot of digging up information and trying to figure out exactly the facts of the hydrogeologic study and how to improve the well water system. So just a little brief background, Wright Water Engineers has been a long-standing Colorado-based company. We were established in 1961 by Ken Wright. Jonathan Kelly here is the office manager of the Glenwood Springs office. He's highly experienced water rights and water resources engineering. And he specifically has been working with Mount Coal Company for since 30 years. 30 years now. So he's well versed in the Minnesota Creek Basin, and then I'm a senior hydrogeologist with Wright Water, so I'm teaming up with Jonathan on this project to make sure that we have all the assets of this project addressed. Great, thanks. So in a big picture, I think most people know that the springs are a vital resource to the town and are located on the flanks of Mount Lamborn and Land's End Peaks. The system is basically comprised of water that infiltrates into the shallow groundwater, mostly talus slope, rock slope on the hillside, and then reemerges further down slope as springs in the system. We know this in part because of a couple of reasons. One is that the timing of the response of these springs tends to be reflect that of a surface water hydrograph in terms of during the peak runoff, we see the stream systems responding, and then we see a slight lag with a lot of the spring systems. So what we're seeing down at the water plant in terms of the collection overall of these springs is a pretty quick response system, as opposed to like a deep bedrock aquifer that feeds springs that are maybe have tens or hundreds of years in terms of their residence time in those formations. And in those type of systems, you'll see a much more gradual response in terms of the variability of the spring flows. What we're seeing is a very rapid runoff response that tails off in the late season, which makes it a little bit more challenging in terms of providing a year-round water supply to the residents.
The historical data, as was kind of indicated, we actually, fun fact that we went back and found some of our old files that we had done back in the mid 1980s. And my predecessor, who founded our Glenwood Springs office, Bill Laura, had done some work for the town base back then. And we found an old hand-drawn schematic that didn't look too different than the schematic that we were creating. The difference is that he had a lot of questions and wasn't able to really address those questions and try to improve the system. He was just trying to document what he could at the time. Now we have, through the grants that have been obtained by the town, we have the opportunity to actually do something about it and take that information and build upon it. So the water supply challenges, as Marshall alluded to, are kind of what has triggered this whole thing, and what we're trying to do is firm up the town's water supply and build up drought resiliency. So a lot of times people ask me, well, what does that mean to be like a water rights engineer? And what I tell them is it's trying to obtain both a physical and legal water supply. And you'll hear that kind of throughout tonight's presentation in terms of how important it is to focus on both equally, because you can have the most senior water right on a stream, but if that stream has no water in it, it doesn't do you much good. And similarly, you can be on the Colorado River and have thousands of CFS, but if you're out of priority, you can't take that water. So it's really important, and we'll talk about the town's portfolio at a high level and where that combination of both the physical and legal supply are optimized and why we've chosen to focus on those areas. As I mentioned, kind of on the flanks, the northwestern aspect of the hill slope, these are the tributary basins for the different springs. It's a very faint. But at the tail end of all of these are surface watersheds that express where the springs are. So I think this one is German spring system, and most of these springs are not a single spring. Most of them are spring complexes. So they have multiple expressions where the water emerges on the surface. And so some of these complexes will have, what do they have, to 5, maybe?
13 individual complexes with 32 springs?
Yeah, so some of the individual complexes can have 5, 6 different collection boxes that are all collecting part of one spring complex. Most of these are decreed as a single water right for the entire complex as a whole. I think most people that are familiar with water, whether it be from agricultural rights or other, know that water in Colorado is precious, right? And there's a high demand for it, and a demand that oftentimes exceeds supply. And so when there's inadequate supply to meet all of the demand, the senior water rights get their water first, and they have the ability to request that the state administer the water rights so that the more senior water rights get their water rights, they get their water supply, and the more junior water rights get curtailed. So we call that putting the stream on call. And that's why it's really important that the town have senior water rights that will allow those to be a firm water supply in terms of when the basin is on call. So when there's more water rights than there is water, the stream is referred to as being over appropriated. And the North Fork is over appropriated. Minnesota Creek is over appropriated. And in fact, most of the tributaries that feed into those drainages are also over appropriated. And then we already talked about the different spring complexes. So the good news is that there is a lot of water on the hillside. When trying to investigate it, the problem is water tends to produce vegetation, right? And so you'll see that the spring collection system is down here. The spring emerges from the hillside here And you can get a little bit of an idea from, this is from the,
That's Upper German Creek Spring, and if you notice on the bottom there, there's a little bit of water that's sticking its head out, but it's very covered up. But from what we've seen is early in the spring, it's full of water, and then late in the summer, it's still full of water. So we're going to talk about Upper German a lot in this presentation, but that's a very important spring. So
Can you show some for scale? There's a vehicle there that you can.
yes, this is a full-size vehicle right here.
that's the chief's side by
It's
side.
sightless.
Oh, yeah. Thank
But
you
it's a
for.
large size.
Yeah, so this is a large system, and as Marshall will discuss later in doing some of the geophysical investigation that we're planning on doing, we have to develop lines and clear a lot of this vegetation. And so that's been one of the big challenges, is getting access to the general area of these whole springs. And then once we get there, getting access to where we need to do our tests, which is we'll talk about a little bit later in terms of the vegetation clearing, et cetera, that needs to happen for that to occur. So historically, as I kind of indicated with the 1980s diagram, there was a general idea that we had these water rights, they were up on the hillside, but the exact mapping of the locations, I mean, a lot of this was done prior to, the stick figures, et cetera, were prior to GPS, where we could get accurate locations and document these. So one of the things that we've been able to do in cooperation with Corey and his staff is to really tie down some of these locations, get them documented, put into a GIS system so that we won't have this problem moving forward, right? And improve the accuracy of where these are located. What spring are we actually looking at? And, we would run into a spring collection box, and it would have 3 pipes in it. It would be like, what water is coming into this spring collection box? And it's like, well, we think this is, and so we've been able to kind of refine our understanding and of what's out there, what's being collected at the different locations, and how that's being distributed, and so how we can build upon that information and improve that collection system. And as I kind of alluded to, the subsurface is really important in terms of understanding a spring system, because what you oftentimes see is merely the surface expression of the groundwater emerging at a single location. But springs can be much more complex than that. They can oftentimes have much of the flow below the surface. And so the spring collection boxes have a certain depth to them, but what we're hoping to understand, and Marshall, I hope I'm not stepping on your toes here with the business, is can additional raw water supplies be collected and into the system by increasing, for example, the depth of that spring collection box. But without the investigations that Marshall's going to talk about, we don't know whether that would actually yield additional water supply or not. So that's one of the things that we're really interested in is, we kind of know what's on the surface. We know what's being collected by the existing system, but the additional investigation will tell us, okay, where can we enhance those spring collections to improve the raw water collection and improve the drought resiliency and to firm up the water supply. So we're going to go through no, just kidding. This is just a schematic that shows the upper and lower water treatment plants, the collection system. Each one of these is a spring or spring complex. I think that this also represents over on the right-hand side the water rights, yes, that are associated with each of these springs. And the drainage basin that they're associated with. So it just kind of gives you a little snapshot in how complex this system is. Obviously, we're focusing right now on the springs that can be delivered to the upper plant, as that's the operational plant, and one of the factors that we've done incorporated into our prioritization of which springs we're focusing on for this initial phase of the work. See what the notes are there. Yes. Yeah, already talked about prioritizing the development of springs with the greatest legal diversion right and the highest potential for physical diversion. So again, that physical and legal, balancing out both of those in order to prioritize which facilities are going to kind of give you the best bang for the buck, if you will.
Our most senior are German Creek in Minnesota, is that right?
We're focusing in on, and we'll talk about this in a minute, is the German Spring Complex, Lake Fork, Old Original, and Reynolds.
Yeah, and I think this next will partly answer that question. No, I'm like, great segue. And when you deal with the priority, it's oftentimes important to understand the priority within the stream system, the tributary that it's a part of. So for example, if you look at the priority, the third column here, you'll see that this Lake Fork Springs is priority 1, but the German Creek Springs is also priority 1. Those are in different drainage basins. And they're the number 1 water right, number 1 meaning the most senior water right in their respective drainages. So it's a complex question in terms of which is your most senior water right, because you have several that are the most senior within their respective drainages. And then you can run into a situation where I don't know that we end up with a call on the main stem that gets to that 1883 priority. But just so you know, when we're talking about these senior water rights, we're talking about water rights that go back to the 1880s. So these are very senior water rights, and they were the springs were developed subsequent to those dates. And say, well, how did that happen? How did they get these senior water rights that go back to the 1880s if those hadn't been filed yet? And the answer is that water court applications were filed at a time when you could transfer an irrigation water right and keep that priority date and assign it to a municipal water right. So it wouldn't be able to be done in that manner, in that simplified manner today. It would require there would be a lot more limitations and a reduction in the yield. But at the time that these water rights were transferred to these springs to give it that priority, they were able to be, most of the agricultural rights are seasonal, right, during the irrigation season and for irrigation purposes. And they were able to be transferred with the full amount of the water right. Transferred to municipal water rights and year-round use. So those are extremely valuable, and those decrees. Sherry Colloy, by the way, the town's water attorney, prepared this table that we're referencing. I want to make sure that due credit is given there to Sherry. And I've worked with Sherry. She's used to work, I don't know if she's still in Glenwood, but she used to be in Glenwood Springs, and I used to work with her firm. So excellent attorney that is representing you guys on those water court matters when necessary. So one of the things I wanted to point out with this table is that water rights have different levels of complexity. So you can look at this table and be like, wow, there's a lot of information going on here. But a lot of people stop after they see, oh, our Lake Fork Springs has a half CFS. That's true at some level, but it's also can be very misleading. And what I mean by that is, well, there's two key aspects that I want to point out. One is that half CFS is actually 1/8 of a 4 CFS water right. So somebody else owns the other 7/8 of that water right. And for the town to get its full half CFS yield, that spring system needs to be flowing 4 CFS. Otherwise, if it's only, say, 2 CFS, then they're only going to get a quarter CFS out of that because it's 1/8 of that water right. So so a lot of people are like, well, we got a half CFS and that's a good supply, right? It is, but it's also a shared ownership supply. And so the ability to get the town's full yield is reliant upon either other people not taking their full supply or the source producing enough water such that the 1/8 or the 12.5% is going to yield that full CFS. So that's one key aspect in how these seemingly simple water rights can actually be quite complex. The other is that this water right was transferred at a later date. I don't remember the case number if it's, it's a 14 CW 3004. So most of these were done in the 70s, and you can just do a simple transfer and preserve all of those attributes that I mentioned before in terms of the full amount of those headgate diversion and change it from a seasonal right to a year-round right. This one in 2014 was after they started requiring additional detail. And what I mean by that is because it was an agricultural right, there's in Colorado water law, you can only transfer the consumptive use portion of a water right. So you do what's called, sorry to geek out on water rights here for a moment, but it's important to the town's supply. You do a historical consumptive use analysis. So basically you evaluate the historical application of that water for irrigation purposes during the irrigation season. And let's just say that it was a 50% irrigation efficiency. So 50% of that would be consumed by the crop, 50% would return to the stream system over time. Only that 50% that's consumed by the crop can be transferred. And so this water right, although it appears on paper to be a half CFS water right, it's actually, if you look at the decree, there's actually monthly limits on the amount that can be used under the municipal use based upon that historical consumptive use analysis. So this is actually much more limited than it appears on paper at first glance. But the Spring Creek Springs, in contrast, have 4 CFS water right, and it was transferred with that number 1 priority, or at least 1.7 CFS of it is the number 1 right on the German Creek system. So that is also an over-appropriated system, and there could be internal calls on that system, but having the number 1 right means that you could never be called out. Now, some of that water is also coming though from a more junior right. Sorry, my laser pointer is. Anyhow, the number, you can see that 1.7 CFS is the senior right, but 2.3, which comprises that 4 CFS that's totaled over to the right, is the number 9 right on that stream system. And so there are water rights that are intervening that if they're not completely satisfied, they could place a call on the stream and call out the more than half of the town's water. Historically, that hasn't happened, but historically, there have been a lot of things that have not happened, especially in Division 4. The Division 4 is the Gunnison River Basin, and the Water Rights Administration has not always been as strict as it is, say, in the South Platte, where every drop of water is accounted for. But one of the things I want to make sure that people understand is just because historically water rights have not been called out a priority does not mean that they won't in the future. So it's really important that as part of this evaluation and looking at how can we capture more water, we're looking at, are we capturing water that we have the legal right to capture and put to beneficial use? And then I mentioned that over on the Lake Fork Springs, that there was only 12.5% that was controlled by the town, with the other 7/8 being controlled by others. That's an important aspect. And this is a spring collection box right here that collects both the Lake Fork and the German Creek Springs. And Marshall can talk about how this is one of our measurement locations where we're collecting some data. But it's important to understand that once the water gets to this, this is also a splitter box. And so the water that comes in from those supplies, 80% of it goes to the town, but 20% of it goes to other users. And so again, we have to understand that there's priorities that limit the amount of water, there's physical supply, and there's also others that own those water rights, and they want their fair share as well. So I'll turn it over to Marshall.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. So we took a drone up and got some really cool imagery and put together a video. And as you watch this video, it's going to kind of goes a little bit fast, but just kind of think about those 4 high priority springs as we go through this. And that's the German Creek Spring Complex, Lake Fork, Old Original, and Reynolds. And each one of those springs is very unique. It's as unique as your fingerprint. And so how that water flows through the geologic formation, why that water expresses itself at that specific spot. Historically, how did the town build these spring boxes, and what lack of information was put into putting in a box and delivering water. It is honestly one of the most complex systems in the Western United States. It really, if you're not there and having the beneficial seeing it firsthand, it really is breathtaking on how simple but complex at the same time. And so as we go through this, I want to try to give you a big picture on why those springs are so important and why we're putting a lot of effort and focus in on those spring systems. We're going to hit play. I think I might break it. Okay. So as you can see, there's the Lamb. So this is the German Creek Spring Complex. And you can see in here, you got outcrops of Mancos Shale. You've got rock glacier that's sliding in, lots of vegetation coverage. And this spring system kind of just hops along German Creek and is captured in these boxes that are kind of round, concrete perforated shallow boxes. So in May 2024, we found the head of the spring, and in August, it dried up. And all the water is kind of getting collected at that one spot. So this is the example of what that box looks like in German Creek, which has 2 of those. Lake Fork is on the other side of the basin. It's a very far distance away, but there's a lot of like these lakes that are up on top. And you got these rock glaciers. You can see the rock, massive just talus rock glacier slopes. And these are called contact springs, meaning that the water is getting fast and then slowed down. And then this is just an example of the seasonality, right? We have more flow in the spring, less flow in the summer. And all that water is getting collected in that 80-20 splitter box. Old Original is a very interesting spring complex. It has some of the oldest boxes that I think I've ever seen in my career. It is unique that we are finding these boxes. This is an example of one of the boxes. And the water is just coming from the hillside. You can't see how it comes out, but this one's interesting that you have the seasonality on a year-to-year basis. in May, it's kind of trickling, but Jordan caught this video in August 2023, where water's just pouring from the hillside. This is an example of our drone capturing these old boxes that nobody knew about. They're just buried in the forest. And so we're trying to get some aerial imagery and also foot reconnaissance to try to find these structures and try to figure out why those things were there, and if they're worth in doing anything else with it. Reynolds is best described as a large spring complex. The water almost becomes so dispersed. And Reynolds, the box is kind of a misshapen plastic pipe into a little dog hut, but there's a lot of water that kind of flows around the hillside, and it seems to be pretty shallow. So it seems to be there might be some underlying magnesia that's kind of pushing that water up to the surface. So, but unfortunately, you won't be able to tell unless one, you drill some holes and you figure out where those different geologic strata are located and the depths. But that's really challenging because you can't go drill a well or a borehole on U.S. Forest Service land without going through a permit process. You can't get a drill rig up to these access routes to figure that out. So we had to come up with some solutions to figure that out to the best of our ability. So we're attacking this as a multifaceted approach. And that means now, not one piece of information is going to tell you everything you need to know. We've had the benefit of technology, as Jonathan alluded to, that historically, doing some of this work without this technology would be next to impossible. Jordan's been up with me a lot on these site visits as my chaperone, making sure I didn't get into trouble. And we found a lot of these old spring boxes. So this is one of the other old original spring boxes. So there's two. And you go into dog hut that collects all the water, and there's 3 pipes that are going into the box. And our drone pilot found the other pipeline, and it goes up to another old box that's dried up. So it's like we're discovering things every day. The more that you're out in the field and looking at this stuff and discovering new information that's never been collected, it's pretty remarkable. So as we go through there, we've been taking our GPS unit and marking up some of these locations. We've been working really closely with Respect Engineering on, did we see a pipeline? Where was it? Is there a valve over here? And trying to develop kind of an as-built of Paonia's water system that really, spatially and understandingly, we need to develop that understanding. That's really important. So we wanted to implement a data acquisition because, as Stefan was alluding to with these spring metering programs, I do want to say that program is much more sophisticated and than what I'm going to be talking about. But we had to get some type of data acquisition immediately because the more that we don't have data, we can't make informed decisions. We got to develop that data set. When talking with James Starnes at Respect, we're both in agreement that, without data-driven decisions, you're going to make misinformed decisions. And so we implemented some spring box monitoring with the use of pressure transducers, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. We got the drone up there to acquire aerial imagery, which is really cool because now we can kind of describe these complex systems to the Paonia public, to the board, and document that in history so that we know exactly how these springs operate and where they're located and what those visual observations could lead to. We've been working with the U.S. Forest Service on working collectively with them. They're very interested in Paonia Springs because they're trying to manage the forest. And if they don't know where Paonia Springs are, they're being left in the dark on stuff. So we've been working very closely with them and getting approval to do all the work that we've been doing. And then we've also been working closely with the town staff. I think that's very important that the information that we're collecting gets transferred to Corey's team. Because they're the guys who are going to be responsible for the day-to-day operation of that. And they need to know that inside and out. So we're definitely trying to educate and invest a lot of knowledge base into Paonia's raw water system to the town staff. This is my sophisticated spring monitoring program. It has some PVC pipe and it's got a pressure transducer in there. And the pressure transducer is recording and monitoring levels. Because a lot of times when you can understand the level of, or the head of water in a box, you can correlate that to flows with some level of accuracy. And certain boxes don't have that capability. The math on it gets kind of complex, but there's a lot that are pretty simple where we can get some estimates, and we are recording data since July, and we'll have, hopefully a year's worth of data to, really present. So the nice thing about this system was it was very inexpensive, collects data, gets it in last summer, and we got a lot of locations, which is helpful because I think more data is always a good investment. And so we put these spring transducers at the 80-20 splitter box, which is German and Lake Fork. We put one at the Upper German Creek spring box and the Lower German Creek spring box. We put one at Lake Fork. Old original within the kind of the box that collects 3 pipes going into it. Reynolds and what is called spore. Observation of spore is there's a box, but there's 2 pipes that go up into the drainage basin. And then if you walk into the drainage basin through a lot of brush, you find that there's just these old pipes that are just laid out in the ground that, there was water. And was ever responsible for the water collection at that time was, hey, let's get pipes of it. Let's try to collect water. Let's try to move it over here. Let's try to collect water and move it to the town. So based on Colorado geologic mapping and mapping that we've acquired, my best guess is that's Upper Reynolds number 3 and 4. Upper Reynolds alone has 7 springs. Pole Patch I think has 9 individual boxes. We were finding boxes just buried out in the woods, and even talking with Dennis, who's been with the town since '95, I believe. We're coming up with stuff that Dennis didn't even know about. And then Dennis has been able to kind of help fill in some data gaps when available. But sometimes Dennis is like, I don't know, I heard something from somebody that this is facts. And so we're trying to kind of piece together all that information to understand what is Paonia's raw water system. And then there's a flume on Bell Creek Basin that collects water from multiple springs, but it's a nice collection spot because, the head within a partial flume, how much flow is coming from that Bell Creek drainage basin. So the drone aerial imagery has been really interesting and intriguing. So we got this drone up, and the funny story is I got my drone pilot to, hey, I'm going to Paonia, I want to fly this stuff, I want to get high resolution aerial imagery. He's like, yep, perfect. we'll get it going, and he's got to order all these extra cards to store the data, extra batteries. He doesn't know where any of these springs are. So we get up there and he flies around this drone. And there was times when he had 30 seconds left the battery before the drone was going to crash. And he's like, whew, that was close. But the work that he has done, and Nick Sidor, I'll give him credit on this, has been absolutely amazing. As you can see, we've been collecting called these orthomosaic imageries, which is really high resolution aerial imagery that doesn't actually exist. So we've been able to stitch that together where you can kind of zoom in ArcGIS and you can see these individual boxes, pipelines in the ground, where the fences are. So somebody from their desk can really look at it and understand it. So that's been really great data to collect. And then with that drone, you can put into a oblique view, which kind of puts the whole spring complex into almost like a three-dimensional view almost. And so you can kind of give it perspective that if you're looking at it at a 2D sense, those trees don't look that big. But then if you put the oblique view on it, you got 40-foot trees covering up that spring complex. And so that's just really good information. Plus you can kind of see the rock slides and how the mega shale might be outcropping at certain spots. Those are all indicators of how that water is flowing through that system. So geophysical surveys and geophysical methods the biggest thing is, one, it's non-intrusive. We can't drill anything up there without getting a permit from the U.S. Forest Service. So we have a methodology within geophysics, which is called resistivity, which electrical currents passes through different geologic strata and water at different times and at different what we call ohm meters. And if you understand the ohm meters, then you can classify what is very highly consolidated Mancus shale that is nearly impermeable versus rock glacier deposit, which is very porous, highly permeable, versus landslide deposit, which is possibly permeable, but there's a lot of intermixing of silts and sands and gravels. And you can also detect where that potential water path might be. And so that's really key information because you need to understand, one, where is the water on a big, large mountain? Two, you need to understand how spatially extent that goes. How far up does that travel? How wide? But you also need to know depth, because if you don't know the depth, you don't know what to build. So with that information, you can get depth measurements, you get the electrical current measurements, and you can get it plotted up on nice cross sections. And then you can actually make some informed decisions on if you're going to redevelop these springs to collect more raw water, what would you build, where would you put it, and how would it get done? So we put together basically these cross sections, which, we try to utilize existing game trips, because you have to have a starting spot for this gear, and you have to bring up car batteries, hundreds of pounds of cables, a computer system that makes thousands and thousands of measurements and records that data in less than 3 hours. And you need to put out a bunch of stakes, metal stakes, and you got to pound that into the ground. You also have to put that line in a more linear feature, because if you go off path a lot, you're not going to be collecting very good information of where that's going to be located. We also have to get the center of the line, which gets you your best quality information right in the center where a spring box is. And you have to orient those where there's not a big rock talus deposit, which would cause you to have multiple of these electrodes not being able to get driven into the ground. Because if you can't drive them in the ground, you can't get a measurement at that point. You also have to run these cables out, they're very heavy and thick. You have to be able to go through a lot of vegetation to do that. So one of the big things is getting that vegetation cleared. So we've been working with Stefan on that, and sounds like we got a brush clearing contractor, and we're really excited. We've been planning this for a long time, so we're hoping to get this done in 2025, which is the plan. And once we collect that data, then we can actually kind of understand exactly what that looks like. And in context, geophysical surveys, they can be anywhere from, those lines could be 900 feet long, or they could be as short as about 500 feet. So there is quite a bit of linear distance that we do have to cover to be able to acquire this information. So in summary, which I just, want to take as these are your 4 take-home messages about Paonia's spring system, which I hope this is, and there's been a lot of information. But these kind of highlight exactly what we need to, our goals are, what we need to achieve. One, your spring systems are incredibly valuable. They are some of the most senior water rights in an over-appropriated basin. The springs are of high quality water. They are crystal clear water, so crystal clear that it's actually difficult to measure because it's that clear. It requires very little treatment. This is something that you should really protect at all costs. We have to balance that legal and physical water supply and consider and prioritize the water that's going to make an impact tomorrow. That's what we have to really always keep in the back of our mind when we're doing these spring complexes. So if you ever ask, why did we pick those 4 springs? Go into the plant that's online. It has the highest water rights, and it has the highest availability of potential water. We're taking a multi-faceted approach to try to figure these things out. And it's really taken a team of experts to try to build this in, because this is the most complex water system in the Western United States. So it takes a lot of smart people. It takes a lot of brain power. It takes a lot of meetings and coordination on how we're going to do that. And then obviously our goal is to, 1, improve the raw water capture and improve drought resiliency, which means we got to get you a really nice box that goes deep, that extends wide and goes into the mountain and is protected, so that the town has a reliable raw water system going forward. So as I can say, this project would not be even remotely possible with everybody on this list and then some if I'm forgetting somebody. So I do want to appreciate all the gratitude for everybody's time, meetings, effort, Public Works Department, Corey, Jordan, Derek, Dennis have just been incredible to work with. The Town of Paonia Board of Trustees, Stefan, helping out on things and helping us at the high level picture. Chief Laminger for letting you borrow his awesome side-by-side, because if you don't have access to those springs, you can't do any work. And then Respect Engineering, taking the water from that box and moving it down to the town. It's an incredible distance. Those guys are incredible to work with. Doug, James, BJ, U.S. Forest Service, working with Abby and Levi, have been just instrumental in making sure that we're staying on par with the federal rules and regulations. Gunnison, Colorado Water Conservation Board, Gunnison Basin Roundtable, and the Gunnison River District have just been awesome to work with. And then
I should also add, they also helped fund the project.
and they help fund the project, so that's good news too. And And I see Mary in the crowd, and, thank you, Mary, for kind of initially spearheading this effort. I know you put a lot of effort and time and thought into it, so appreciate your efforts as well. So we'll open up for the questions. So either Jonathan and I, if we can't answer the question, I know we have Corey and then I believe James online.
Yeah. So, trustees, questions? Trustee Short?
So I've been thinking a lot about water line replacement because we're gonna be replacing 2 miles and it's very expensive. And so as I was hearing your presentation, all I could think about was how many miles and miles of pipe go from the springs to our treatment plants, and what's that pipe look like?
It is truly incredible the amount of pipe that is out there. I think James could probably speak to more of the engineering side of that. I could probably speak to just being out in the field with obviously the town staff. There's a lot of old pipe that needs to be replaced. I mean, it's leaking, it's deteriorated, it's rusted up. Trying to figure out how these pipes are laid out, right? That's a incredible feat as well. So I mean, the town has a great team put together. I think that's the biggest thing. Is we got a really good, smart team put together for you guys.
Thanks.
I don't know if James wanted to answer the question or Corey.
Yeah, it's multiple miles. I mean, I don't know that we ever really calced out how many miles of line it is yet, but James still on.
I am. I don't have an exact number for you either, but I think important thing to relay to the town is just the work that Wright Water's doing is critical for prioritizing, raw water line improvements in the future capital improvement phases that Stefan has spoken about already. So right now, at least 2 additional capital improvement plans are in the works, and the work that Wright Water's doing is going to play a critical role in defining those. So.
Any other trustee questions? And so for the sake of time, I want the public to have a chance to weigh in, but I don't know what to do. Because it's almost 8 o'clock and we have quite a bit, and I know most of you are here because you really do want to speak. So let me just ask for the people in the audience, who would like to get up and have 3 minutes?
On this subject.
On this subject, I see 3 hands, and then let me just check who's online that would like to speak. Okay, doesn't sound like anybody. Is that right? No, yes. Okay, so I think that's very manageable. So yeah, gentlemen in the gold coat, come on up and give us your name and if you live in or out of town.
My name is Stan Park. I live just outside of town, and I'm also on the AOG Fire Board.
Thanks. Can you sign? Is there a sign-up sheet on the podium if you would do that? Thank you.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I'm just curious, how many CFS is currently being delivered to the town's facility?
So
On a daily average basis?
currently we're running a little low right now. We normally see it. But I want to say it's about 400 right now.
400
Gallons per minute.
400 gallons per minute.
Which is just under 1 CFS.
Yeah, you're right. Right.
Could you come back up to the podium? So that way you can be heard and reported.
So if I'm hearing right, we're getting 400 gallons per minute.
That's what we're able to.
And if I understand these guys correctly, we're entitled to 6.4 million gallons per day. And based on the allocations that come out, it's about 3.4 million gallons a day. We're getting 400 gallons per minute right now, right? So I don't know what that equates to per day, but But I'm just thinking about in light of the fires and things in California, and being on the fire board, just trying to do a little math prior to our meeting coming up here in a couple of weeks. But thank you.
No, that's a great question. So, one, the springs got to be improved. I mean, like, so it's hard to get like a definitive answer on this is exactly how much water you're capturing at these spring complexes. Because some of this water is just getting spilled on the mountain. Some of this water is just leaking around the pipelines. So whatever Corey's seeing, he's like, I believe there's more water up there, but we need to really evaluate that. And then with the fire things, right now, there's a wildfire ready action plan for the North Fork of the Gunnison Basin. I'm planning on attending that meeting just to have a presence that here's where these Ionia Springs are located. And it needs to be put into that valuable resource so that it can be included in any fire mitigation studies. So it definitely is a very, very high priority for us to make sure that these springs are in the forefront of trying to protect against forest fires.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then I know Suzanne, you had your hand up.
Suzanne Watson, I live in town. I have two questions. The first one is, are you going to enter us into the Guinness Book of World Records for the springs, the most complicated in the Western United States? Is that a category?
If there is, we're gonna make one.
Okay, great. And then my other question is, I know, that's our water, it's our right. But with increased efficiency, are we going to be drying up the mountain at all? You're talking about this canopy and the forest, the cover up there. And I don't know how the water is all running, but our plants and trees up there are dependent on some of this water that might be spilling. And might we see desertification? And is there a wildfire risk to being more efficient? With us taking more of that water and capturing, and it could create future problems with drying out the mountainside and potentially becoming a fire threat in itself.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. Obviously, there's a few different components of that. One is the Forest Service wants to thin some of these areas because if you have a lot of vegetation, that's fuel. And so I think that's one aspect that that's a Forest Service management standpoint. They're much more experienced in that avenue than I am. Two is, I think we do have to prioritize that the town needs raw water. At a certain point, human consumption of water and having that water available to the town is highly dependent on that. There is a lot of water on that. I don't think that the town taking a percentage more, it's really going to be a drop in the ocean is my 10,000 view of it. So I don't think it's going to lead to any type of long-term effects that the hillside's going to dry up. I mean, most of the water just kind of spills off and runs off into the Gunnison. Or Norfolk, but yeah.
Yeah, I would just add to what Marshall was saying in terms of, part of what we're doing as our phase 1 study is kind of a water balance to look at the overall precipitation that's falling on these drainage basins, how much of that is manifesting itself in the emergence of these springs, and then how much of those springs, right, are we collecting? And so we're kind of doing it to make sure that we understand how much water is available to be collected. But to Marshall's point, it's a pretty small percentage of the overall water balance for the watershed.
Thank you.
And for the vegetation too, we're trying to be as minimally invasive as possible.
Yeah, they're not going to be clearing anything. I mean, it's 0 trees are being cut down. It's mostly scrub oak and Forest Service. I think that is it. I don't really care about the scribble.
As much as you can.
Yeah, take as much as you can. Yeah, take as much as you can.
Even with that, we're not gonna go up there and clear cut anything. Just make a small path.
Yeah, yeah.
Scalpel we need.
It's a scalpel, it's not a bulldozer.
Mary?
Mary Backron, in-town resident. I want to say I am right-of-way trust government. I am so thrilled that the bang for the buck we have gotten for our money that we have put into this is amazing and will continue to be an invaluable resource to the town. So thank you so much.
Our pleasure.
Thank you, Mary.
Anyone? Yes, Marty. Come on up.
I'm Marty Derlin, I live in town and I know the water as well. And I wonder why temperature of the water is different. You said concerned about the temperature.
No, I'm not concerned about the temperature of the water. Temperature of water is just an indicator on, is it snow melt versus precipitation, or is it coming from much deeper in the formation? Because if it's deeper in the ground, it's going to be higher temperature.
And that's why you want it.
Yeah, so it's really just trying to understand the seasonality of the temperature.
Okay. And the origin of the water to some extent.
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, to say that this water is coming from deep within the fracture systems is highly unlikely, because the underlying bedrock is Mancos Shale. And the Mancos Shale is notorious in Colorado for having very poor water quality. And it's really high in total dissolved solids, sulfates, chloride.
Yeah, and just to add, yeah, so we're taking some real simple parameters like TDS or salinity, right? Because generally speaking, the longer that the water is in contact with these formations like the Mancos, the more it dissolves those minerals and the more, the higher the TDS. So it's a good, simple way to measure, and it's part of the reason that we know that there's a low residence time as the water is moving from the precipitation to the emergence on the springs. And the water quality is so good, and is because it's not coming in contact for a long period of time with these bedrock formations. It's a very quick system, which doesn't give it opportunities to collect those constituents that can be difficult to treat.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't understand why that was important. I was thinking climate warming or something.
Oh,
You know, but
no, it's
volcanic activity.
no, it's just understanding seasonality is the best way to describe it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. This has been phenomenal.
Okay, thank you for our
Such a
opportunity.
learning.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to give you a status update on.
No, it's great. We appreciate it so much.
When do you
Thank
think we'll see you next?
I'll be here tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Well, wow. So let's move on to item number 1. Choosing a mayor pro tem to serve while trustee Valentine, the current mayor pro tem, is participating remotely. So there's a report in here that trustee Valentine is, as you can see, is going to be joining us remotely for several months. And our resolution regarding mayor pro tem and the mayor makes it clear that if I can't serve, the mayor pro tem takes over, but I can't serve as mayor remotely. Consequently, the mayor pro tem cannot serve remotely. So with those of you in the room, we need a mayor pro tem to volunteer while trustee Valentine is serving remotely.
I'll volunteer.
Would someone like to make a motion to that effect?
I'll move that Kathy is our mayor pro tem.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Yep, trustees.
It's just until he's back.
And the other is a housekeeping, which is a consideration of approval of resolution designating holiday office closures. And Stefan, would you like to?
Yeah, this is almost a copy and paste of what we did last year with the addition of Christmas Eve being a holiday for town employees, bringing the total to 13. This is something that you guys had taught, was in the budget, knew about, and so now this is the resolution that kind of makes it happen.
Any discussion amongst the trustees? Okay, I'm going to ask the public if anybody has any comments from the public on this resolution, either online or in the room.
I don't see any online.
Thank you. Go ahead, trustee Hunter.
I'll move to approve resolution 01-2025.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Another bit of housekeeping is the consideration of approval of resolution 02-2025 designating the public posting places for the town of Paonia. This again is one that we have to do every year. And in this case, nothing's being changed. It would be posting the agenda in town hall, and the official publication newspaper of generous circulation will continue to be the Delta County Independent. Anything you'd like to add?
This is not my resolution, so I'm not prepared. Samira is on, if you guys have any questions.
Any comments from the public? Oh, sorry, trustee
You know,
Schwartz.
last year, I remember we had a very lengthy discussion about do we move over to the High Country Shopper as our new official publication? And I think the county just moved over to the High Country Shopper. But given that we have to make this, I'm assuming that this resolution, we have to do it first meeting of the year.
And if you do want to make amendments, so let's say you want to add 2 official publication newspapers, you can make that amendment and still pass it tonight. You would just say, you would make a motion to that effect with the following edits. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And yeah, I think I would want to see like cost comparisons, but granted that we don't have that information, then I feel fine with this resolution.
Any other trustee comments? Anybody in the public, online or in the room? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution 02-2025.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And
Madam Mayor, can I
yes.
request a 5-minute recess before the next agenda item? please?
Sure, would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to move for a 5-minute recess.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Everybody come back and, I don't know, 8:13, please. call this meeting back to order. And we have another housekeeping item of sorts. Item number 4, consideration of a contract for Mary Backren to continue grant writing and associated assistance. And Stefan, if you would just give a quick summary. Sure, page 105.
Okay, so this is this is to formalize the agreement that we have with Mary as a grant writer. We did budget for this position going into fiscal year 25 as a kind of a 1099 contracted employee. I anticipate that because of getting additional grants, and when we start reporting for our fifth and grand, that her putting those reports together for reimbursement are going to be invaluable. And so that's why this grant agreement that we're looking at it's a professional services agreement that goes for 2 years, ends December 31st, 2026. It delineates or it says scope of work that she's going to perform, keeps it at $50 an hour with a not to exceed of $15,000 per year, which would require a 1099 if she even got close to that. So that's what this does, is it's a formalized agreement. The template is from our town attorney and then tailored for the specific situation. It does remove what used to be paragraph 12 for insurances, for unemployment insurance for employees. Mary's an office of one, so that was removed from this template. But then if you want to see her scope of work, it is attached as Exhibit 1. At this time, this only contemplates water and our water grants, and also our fifth and grand grants for that project. It does not include wastewater because I really want to pump the brakes on some of these design stuff. So
thank you.
I should also mention that it can be amended at any time. So
things arise.
If we have an emergency with sewer, we can add it to an agreement.
Comments from the trustees?
I fully support Mary or Ms. Backren as a grant writer. I think it's invaluable to have that kind of expertise and experience in this role, and you can't just find that in a enrolled grant writer. So I think that this is a total win-win for the town.
Any other trustees have comments? Anything from you, John? There he is. Yep. John, any comments?
No.
Okay, thanks. And I'll open it up to the public. If anybody would like to have 3 minutes to speak on this issue, whether online or in the room. Okay, seeing none. At this point, would somebody like to make a motion?
I move to approve the professional service agreement with Mary Backren. What's the number here?
Oh, it's just one number.
Okay.
That was it. That's a good motion.
I'll second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
John, are you aye?
Yes.
Thank
Thumbs
you.
up.
All right. Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 5, the consideration of referendum petition to repeal ordinance 2024-25. So we have a staff report from Clerk Better, and I'm gonna ask Administrator Nguyen just to revisit the background associated with that, and we'll decide where to go from there.
Sure. On January 6th, the referendum petition was filed with the town clerk and to repeal short-term rental ordinance 2024-05. She deemed it sufficient. So finding that there were enough signatures to say that this petition is sufficient. On January 8th, 2025, which kept ordinance 2024-05 from taking effect. We did seek a legal opinion from the Colorado Municipal League, of which they said almost identical to this. The board has two options. They can repeal ordinance 2024-05 and then work to amend it so that it could be something that both sides of the issue would be okay with, or they could send the question, they being the Board of Trustees, could send the question of repealing ordinance 2024-05 to a special election and let the voters decide. So what Clerk Vetter is saying is that there is already a scheduled election for April 1st, which would significantly reduce our cost if it did go to a referendum vote. That the Delta County elections is working in, that we meet the timing and deadlines for decisions have to be made now so that we can get an IGA in place and get it over to the county. So you really have, two options, but I think it would be interesting to hear what the people here tonight have to say. There is a potential fee if it does go to an election of just shy of $3,100.
Could you elaborate on the outcome of the voter, the election?
Yeah, so if, let's say it goes to referendum vote and this petition would fail, so it doesn't pass and the ordinance does take effect, it can still be amended. So let's say that it goes and there's a simple majority that want to see that the ordinance still stays in place. It can be amended at any time by any one of you. If it does go through and this special petition does pass, it doesn't mean that it's over, right? If there's still some desire to do a regulation of short-term rentals, it would go back to the drawing board. So the ordinance as it exists today, what was in the petition would be done. We would have to go back to the drawing board and add things in that were taken out or make it so that it's substantially different than the one that was on that referendum ballot.
Does that help?
But again, an ordinance can be, or anything in our code can be amended at any time. Should one of you, we've started that process now where once ordinances are brought on an agenda, it's introduced by at least 2 trustees. So that's a standard practice in municipal government all across the nation. It's something that's new to us as of 2024, late 2024.
So you're saying that trustees could bring back changes?
Correct.
Without, okay.
At any time.
At any time.
And could that be before the election? Or is that?
My understanding from CML is that it's kind of past that point now. So you really have 2 options. You can either repeal it, go back to the drawing board, or you can send it to the voters as a ballot initiative.
Okay.
That's at a cost, isn't it? It costs money to do a ballot.
It does. And so the potential fees, if it were to go to election, are just shy of $3,100.
Then what it costs?
Yeah.
Right. Everybody cogitating that? I was going to open it up to the public to come up and speak. Just, go ahead. And Marty, I saw your hand first.
Can you just establish your time frame? 10 minutes?
Yep.
Okay. And name in town, out of town?
Yep. Marty, I saw you first.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Delta has an election already scheduled to ratify their charter, the new charter, and the cost of the election is $20,000. They were so hoping that some other town would have an issue because that's gonna impact the $3,100 fee. It'll be more like $10,000. Sounds like. Just guess.
If we get it on.
Okay, thank you. All right. Other hands. I see a hand in the very back row.
What about the people?
Oh, I'll get them too.
Deborah Spiegel in town. I understand the town's desire to manage short-term rentals. It's important to balance the needs of the community and we all want Paonia to thrive. But the way this ordinance is written is confusing, unfair, and doesn't solve the issues it's meant to address. If a homeowner rents out a room or two in the house they live in, this would not be a long-term rental solution, and therefore shouldn't be part of this ordinance. They should have the freedom to rent a room without unnecessary government interference. Regulating how long someone lives with another in their private home oversteps the boundaries of local governance. I rent out a room in my home occasionally. It's not about making big money, it's about helping out. Sometimes it's someone coming for cherry days, a booth worker who can't find a hotel room, or a student elsewhere. These visitors support local events and businesses and the culture that makes Paonia special. Last year, I made a whopping $1,500, barely enough to cover a few bills. Under this ordinance, I'd have to pay $300 just for the license for 2 rooms. On top of that, I'd need to remodel my house to install a 36-inch door just to qualify. My home is old and that kind of modification isn't even feasible. Then there's additional fees, $250 for a special review, $80 an hour for administrative costs, $235 an hour for legal reviews, mailing costs, all non-refundable. I'd be out hundreds, if not thousands, just to make my $1,500. This ordinance doesn't just affect people like me. If any of you ever want to rent out your home while on vacation to cover expenses, you'd be subject to these same rules. Without a license, you could face fines of $300 a day. The ordinance cites issues like housing scarcity and neighborhood impacts, but where's the data? How many long-term rentals have actually been lost to FTRs? Are short-term rentals causing significant problems? Without evidence, these claims feel arbitrary. Have you researched the long-term after effects of ordinances like this? What about fairness? If off-street parking is a concern, why not apply that standard to everyone, not just STR operators? And why are STRs being singled out to retrofit their homes when other homeowners aren't held to the same standards? I'm asking the trustees to repeal this ordinance. Then let's gather data and work together to create a fair, clear ordinance that balances the needs of everyone.
Thank you. Did I see another hand in the audience? Yes, gentleman on my left.
Hi there. My name is Chris Sutton, Solar Energy International, part of our leadership team and run the Paonia facilities here.
In town or out of town?
Out of town, thank you. One, I want to say I understand both sides of this argument for sure. As a business, it's difficult for us to hire people in from out of town because lodging, for people to move in to take a job is a difficulty. But I also understand the limitations of reducing short-term housing and how that can impact us as a business. Some of the things that we do at Solar Energy International is we've been teaching classes here in the Valley for 18 years. Our classes that we conduct here in Paonia, we average about 15 to 20 weeks of training here from about May to October. That's kind of our Paonia season. And those classes can vary in size from 10 on the small side to 30 on the large side. So we can have classes sometimes that are 30 students plus 5 instructors we bring in from out of town. And most of those classes are here for a week. Usually they come in on a Sunday, leave the following week on a Saturday. And so we end up with these short-term lodging situations to support our students. When we look at our annual kind of, funds that we bring into the community, we look at what students spend throughout a season. We usually see that our students are spending upwards of probably $500,000 a year being pushed into the community with a combination of housing, food, all the amenities around here. So we're bringing quite a bit of money and trying to push that money into the community in a lot of different ways. With that, we also, have employees here. So we have, in the ballpark of, we have about 10 full-time staff that live here in Paonia. And if we look at the money that we support through our training and how that affects the community, we see that we bring in probably at least $1 million a year that's pushed into the community. That all being said, our biggest concern right now is that if there's a reduction in the short-term housing, that's something we run up against as an issue currently in the market that it is today. Now, of course, we try to push students to the hotels and other options, but because of the numbers and because of the costs, that can become difficult. Some of our students are corporate funded and have more money. Some of our students are coming in on scholarships. And ultimately, our concern is that those short-term, housing options, if they're reduced, may reduce the activities that we continue to operate here in Paonia. And that's kind of a bigger concern for us as an organization. So what I'd like to see is at least considering the ability to raise that cap of how many units might be available to try to help accommodate for other situations, other businesses, and or also maybe eliminating the cap on single rental, single rooms in order to also help accommodate some of those lower funded students through our programs. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Yeah. And hang on one second. Let me switch to other people online that would like to speak. No hands. No hands? Okay. Susan.
Oh, we already get, no.
Okay. Suzanne, I saw your hand next.
I'm kind of ripping off the STI comment. Renting a room on a temporary basis in an owner-occupied home has been a long tradition in Paonia. For almost 2 decades, Solar Energy International students have come to Paonia and had the opportunity to share a home of a local resident, renting a bedroom on a short-term basis. One person I know charges renters $100 per week. She recognizes how costly their education can be. The income from this seasonal activity is minimal, with no interest in becoming a business. This person, a senior citizen, enjoys meeting students from this country and from abroad. This ordinance does not respect homeowners who are not operating as businesses, but are only occasional landlords. I do want to expound on this 36-inch door requirement for short-term rentals. That's really cumbersome for people who are homeowner occupied houses. Many of these old houses in town have nothing larger than a 32-inch wide door. And you don't just pop a 36-inch wide door on the hinges. You have to tear into the wall and change the framing. You have to put a larger header in. That triggers a Paonia building permit. It triggers engineered plans, especially if it's a weight-bearing wall. You're looking at $150 an hour for plan review for that. It can destroy a historic house. You're messing with outside siding, you're messing with the interior wall structures, you're probably messing with the threshold. I think there are expenses that you might not have considered when you made those requirements. If it's not a business, if it's not something that you require for long-term rentals, I don't understand why you would impose that requirement on short-term rentals, especially if they're not a business. I'm afraid, I know you're trying to go after the corporate kind of STR model, but I think this ordinance comes down the heaviest on the little guys. I think the ordinance in itself could hollow out the community, not STRs. Thank you.
Yes.
Someone else.
All right, and there's a hand raised online. Please go ahead and state your name and if you live in or out of town.
Hi there. Thanks so much. My name's Chris Menges. Live out of town. My wife and I own a property in Paonia, a very modest place that we've had for 2 years that we like to work on as we can and kind of chip away at with, the idea of eventually moving into it. And while we sometimes spend time there or rent to family members of neighbors, we also rent it as an STR sometime. And it is certainly not profitable. It helps keep us less underwater. And, I kind of want to note that to say, I think that's kind of, what it takes, right, to try to make one's way as a current generation in Western Colorado now So as some of the other speakers have mentioned, this really kind of comes down on the little guy a little bit harder. I wanted to pop in today and just share a recommendation to repeal the current ordinance and craft an updated one that's better suited to the problems that I think the community is trying to solve, avoids unintended consequences and unnecessary harms to the communities, and is based on both good process, data, and experiences of a variety of community members. I've lived in Western Colorado for 25 years. I understand the instinct. We've all seen a lot of changes, but the ordinance is written really scapegoats short-term rentals for a much more complex set of problems. And it's an overreaction that targets working class folks and community members who are an important part of the local economy, as the SEI gentleman was discussing. The ordinance seems to assume that institutional investors are buying up town. Based on my admittedly short experience, this is not what I've seen. We've had a small, a sizable STR group get together. And these are all folks who are either locals or, folks like ourselves who are really just like working class folks trying to be part of the community. As a homeowner, I've been concerned with what I've perceived as a lack of process. The first time I heard about this is when we heard about the ordinance being passed. So going back to the drawing board and using, what you've discovered so far could really be a basis for more engagement with affected folks. Lastly, I'll just share, I've worked extensively on local government policy for the past 20 years. I worked in local government for 10 years. I've seen the impacts that well-intended but poorly designed policies have on a community. And I believe that this ordinance as written will have negative unintended consequences. So therefore encourage a repeal and revise process so that the community can craft the policy that it deserves. Thanks.
Thank you. No one else? Hang on one second. Let me just make sure no other hands online. Okay. I'm sorry, raise your hands again here. Right in the, yes, lady in the front row. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jamie Park, and I have a family home in town across from the city park. My dad built that home in 1961. It was my grandfather's apple orchard before that. So I've got a little bit of roots in the community. I see Mary's here tonight. She may remember, I have a heart for affordable housing. I approached her when she was mayor and knew that she had a heart for affordable housing. I wanted to provide affordable housing, purchase a piece of town-owned property to build about 15 units of affordable housing. She was excited about it, right? Okay, all on my dime, no money from the town. They didn't want to sell it to me, but they'd consider a long-term ground lease. At first, I was discouraged about that, but then I came around with a plan, showed Mary the product that would work on that property, which would actually do something about affordable housing. The reason is because I've been approached by people, because I rent long-term, I rent short-term. The house in town, we rented it out for 22 nights. I made less than $6,000. It barely covers my taxes, insurance, and utilities. I've donated the house more than I've rented it out. I've given it to friends, friends of friends, family. It's not a long-term rental candidate. And then what is affordable rent? If you own a home and it's worth a certain amount of money, is it fair to the homeowner to deeply, deeply discount that, rent it out? I've done that. But you know what? I've had horrible circumstances with some long-term tenants. I've had some great circumstances with long-term tenants. I've got tenants that they've been in one of my properties for over 5 years. I've never raised their rent. It was well below market to begin with. They've raised their own rent on themselves 3 times. So I do have a heart for providing housing. This is not going to do it. I've got a lot of data, but short amount of time. I believe that there's a lot of unintended consequences through implementing of this ordinance. 30 STRs are not responsible for the high housing costs in Paonia. Spoiler alert, we've heard we have plenty of water. We just need to get our infrastructure built up to carry that water. You got that. Okay. The cost of housing is not due to the 30 STRs, if that's what you limit it to. That is less than 3.4% of the total housing dwelling units in Paonia. We currently have a mix of 60% owner occupied to 40% renter occupied. It shows. You have to decide if this is what you're going to push, be careful what you wish for. Our town used to be called the garden spot. Take a drive around town. We don't have that pride of ownership. We've got 40% of renter-owned properties already, and it shows. And so I'm respectfully asking you to consider repealing and honoring the petition.
Thank you. And I saw other hands, but I don't remember whose they were. Gentlemen on my right.
Well, Mayor, others, Joe Yeamans, we live on Pitkin Mesa, used to live in town. We own 2 STRs in town. I was blown away by the housing needs and assessment and housing action plan, 170-page document that was done. Just found it today, but anyway, I'd like to quote some from page 58. Heading regulate short-term rentals, and I'll abbreviate here. Regulating short-term rentals, STRs, was the community's top priority during the 2023 community engagement efforts. Skipping down, in Paonia, there are about 30 documented STRs. Community input received during this project identified pros and cons to having STRs in Paonia. Pros include that STRs provide more lodging options for people visiting their families, income for local businesses due to visitor spending, and income for local STRs owners. Cons included that STRs reduce the supply of housing for the community, provide income for profit for out-of-town STR owners, and negatively impact community and neighborhood character and residents' quality of life. Chris mentioned on the Zoom just now, he rather doubted that. We have a group of STR owners and managers that meet, done a little survey, partial, got 11 responses to a questionnaire. Reduces housing supply. We have found 0 people who would turn their STRs into LTRs, long-term rentals. Profit for out-of-town investors. We have found 0 investors who have bought STRs or places to use as STRs for profit. Impact on community. Haven't done much investigation there. However, our own personal experience is that our STRs improve the quality of our neighborhoods. We take better care of our yard, better care of our housing.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes are up. Thank you very much. Yes. Second row. Second row. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Katie McNeil. I live just a few miles out of town on a property that I bought with a friend. I think I agree with everyone's points here, and I totally see both sides. Her and I bought this property together and had to get pretty scrappy on just owning a property these days. I think that's kind of what we're hearing across the board from everyone, that we assumed this was going to impact like big corporations coming in and buying up all of our housing, and that's just not really the case. From the 170-page document that Joe referenced, I went through that as well. I was pretty shocked to see like the qualitative data referenced around the short-term rental impact from the community input, but that being like the #1 short-term plan to implement, but there's no data in there, hard quantitative data backing up what the outcome of that is actually gonna be. To Joe's point, so far, early findings on our parts of doing, only our own studies have been that won't actually change the long-term rental problem. So if that's really the problem, is this cap actually doing anything for anyone? If not, hurting the little guys, like who's gonna end up selling homes, family homes that have historically been here, that can't creatively find a way to make their mortgage and utilities meet. So I guess, I mean, arguably as a person living out of town with a short-term rental, this would impact me in a great way, but I wouldn't want to see this process, like this isn't the way that the process I think should play out. Hastily pushed through and little quantitative data backing up why this is actually going to affect anything. I agree that I think it should be repealed and thought out a little bit better before being pushed through, so it feels a little less hasty and actually gather input from the community and both sides here. It feels pretty one-sided in the input that was gathered early on about wanting to reduce the short-term rentals. So I agree that it needs to be repealed. Thanks.
Thank you. I see another hand in the audience. Yes, woman in the back. Your hand was up first. Sorry, you can be next.
Shirley Vance, and my husband spoke, and we do have 2 houses that we have rented. Well, we lived in one and rent them both short term. I have had to reconsider what I'm going to do with these houses, which has been very stressful. We have rented for SEI for years now, and they love having those 2 houses. But I have reconsidered that. I would not rent the large house. It's a historical home. I would not rent it long-term. We've been down that road and we don't want to go there. I love taking care of people, taking care of my property and my house and so forth. The little house, I'm contemplating something else with that house because I don't see where I could do both probably. I just wanted to say that one size doesn't fit all. And this ordinance, I mean, any kind of an ordinance, it's directed the way you want to see it. And of course, I'm partial. All of us here who are speaking up for short-term rentals, we're doing it. But I did some investigating, and I was wondering if some of this ordinance couldn't be changed a little bit to be less regulatory. I found out that there was one town that does a self-inspection form, and you come into the town and you sign up, you let the town know that you're doing this, and they have a questionnaire thing that you check off, and the things that you can't comply with, then you take care of that and you have it notarized. And I thought that was a good idea. And I think a lot of this has to operate on trust. And some of us who've been doing this like 12 years, surely we can be trusted because we have met the demands of Airbnb because we are regulated by them. We're regulated by our customers who, if we're not doing a good job, they're going to report us. And we're also regulated by our neighbors and their input. And so I would like to see the ordinance deregulated a little bit. And if it was deregulated, then that would lower the cost that the town is imposing on the short-term rental people. We've been informed that $500 is a bit much. I don't know. I did do some research and I thought Kremling was interesting because it speaks to where we are. They have no regulations. And when they brought it up, they decided that it was a private property right. And how could they come in and tell private owners how to use their property? And anyway, there you go. Thank you. Thank you. I could say more, but yeah.
One up. Forget your name, sorry.
Yes, my name is Stan Park, and I live on Picken Mesa, and my wife is the one that was talking about her childhood home she grew up in that we own near the park. And to her point earlier, just to kind of finish one point there, is that she has been a real advocate of affordable housing for people in town. And the one thing that she left out was that it was the lack of water taps available in order to build such a project anywhere in town. So from the conversations earlier today, that was real encouraging to hear that we are currently delivering an eighth of our water right entitlement if we so decided to have that much water delivered to our facilities. And being on the Paonia Fire Board and with what's happening in California, I have some concerns there as well, which is another topic. But my question regarding this in your section 6-5-80 on the penalties, where it states about $300 a day for violators. I'm just trying to understand, and I would suggest repealing and maybe reworking an ordinance. I'm not necessarily opposed to an ordinance of some sort, but I would suggest that there was to be some rewording done in the of what a STD is, the short-term rentals, and under the current federal government tax laws, every U.S. citizen is entitled under the Augusta rule. And for those of you who are not familiar with that, the Augusta rule allows any U.S. citizen to rent their home out for 14 days in any given year, tax-free, and that income is tax-free. I have done that in the past, and I'm hearing others that have rented their homes out during cherry days or the BMW rally, mountain festival, things like that. And why in the world would we put an ordinance in place that would take away a person's right under the federal tax law that was put into effect over 50 years ago to allow people to rent their homes up to 14 days tax-free? I think that's definitely an economic impact to our citizens. And lastly, as a former owner of a business downtown, boy, the short-term rentals brings in a lot of people that stay for extended times and periods in Airbnbs and STDs. And anyway, thank you.
Thank you. We knew what you meant. Anybody else in the audience?
It's a good one to end on.
Yes, it is. Is there anyone else in the audience here in town hall that would like to speak?
Aren't you against STDs?
I was gonna say, that's a whole other agency. Anybody else who would like to speak? And any other hands up online? Okay, all right. With that, we'll turn it back over to the trustees and with maybe some input by Stefan as may be needed. Discussion. Yes.
I would like to just ask about, do we have to make a decision tonight or based on the IGA with Delta County for the election?
That is really a legal procedural question that I would defer to the attorney because I don't have an answer. So our clerk is.
Better. Yes, I think she can answer it.
Yeah.
But Clay is ready to talk.
Oh, okay.
I'll wait.
Okay, so her answer is yes on the IGA. So we need to know tonight for the IGA on what position you guys are going to take.
Thank you for that. And Clay, please go ahead.
No, I was going to say that the option to table and discuss this further is not an option because we missed the opportunity at the to piggyback on the county election. So same answer, different words.
Thank you. The discussion, trustee Chair?
I would like to see us avoid the referendum and repeal the ordinance and rewrite it ourselves and have public input and pass a new ordinance as soon as we can.
So the thoughts, trustee Hunter?
This is, I mean, it's no secret, this is difficult. It's difficult countrywide. And while personally, I tend to agree with most people in this room, as a trustee, I know that this process, that there is data that went into writing this ordinance that has been spoken to in previous meetings and throughout the process. There was data collection with the Housing Needs Assessment and Action Plan, but more discussions that happened at the Board of Trustees level. Throughout that process, I shifted more towards more restrictive language in the ordinance on the STRs based on public comment. Throughout the process, we heard a lot more from people who wanted short-term rentals restricted for myriad reasons. And I feel like we're really hearing the voices in the room now. I'm of the mind to put it to the voters to decide. Because we've tried outreach, we've tried surveys, we've tried any number of different things. And just like you said, with your group of STR owners, you tried to get information and you got 11 responses. And we've had similar difficulties. So in my mind, putting it to the voters, that's going to be our best judgment of getting input from the entire community, one way or the other. One thing, and I just kind of toying around with this, I don't even know if this is a possibility, but the referendum petition is very specific as to the language that would go on the ballot. I'd be interested in seeing an additional question on the ballot as far as the ideal cap on STRs. If the ordinance, well, either way, if the ordinance were to remain, or if we were to follow it up with a completely different ordinance, what the community would feel a reasonable cap would be, being less than 30, 40, or more than 40. See, I had some notes just based on emails that I wanted to address. Let's see, there was community input as far as including grandfather clause for current STRs, and there was another suggested of unlimited owner occupied STRs. The thing is, even if it's grandfathered in, if we're going to do any kind of ordinance where we track it, it's going to take staff time. So there's going to be some type of an expense, and that just goes hand in hand with actually having it regulated at all, which I think is necessary. And the difference is, so out of people that don't live in town or don't occupy their STR, but they rent it out, the fees are much more. Where people that do occupy the home that they're renting a room out or renting out, it basically doesn't even cover staff time, but it comes close to it. So, I mean, I know that sucks, but it kind of is what it is. I know there's been a lot of comments on the doors, and I would actually like to hear Stefan comment on that, because the 36-inch door is an ADA requirement, but it's actually a little more complicated than that. And I believe the measurement is when the doors open 90 degrees, it's a 32-inch
swing.
The clear opening, right? Yeah.
So it's, the ordinance says 36 by 80 inch. It doesn't specify that that's a pre-hung door with a 32-inch swing. So we have had some folks that have already filled out applications for short-term rentals. Rather than put staff, any of my staff in a position where, so this may or may not happen, I have gone and done those inspections myself. They take about 3 minutes. We measure the door opening for a swing. look for an egress window, make sure there's smoke detectors in the house. I found there's some things where I haven't failed anyone yet. Everybody seemed to comply. They had egress openings and a 36 by 80 inch pre-hung door with 32 inch swing.
So essentially, the distinction is that it's a 36 inch when it's pre-hung, but it's 32 inch opening.
Correct.
That wasn't clear really to me in the ordinance. I
Correct.
agree. It's unclear.
Let's see, and I'm sorry, a couple more things, just in response to comments that I've received via email. Somebody had emailed in saying that the special use review is problematic, and I believe the comment was to the effect of a neighbor could just veto an STR application before it even has an opportunity to be in effect. The special use review is only required in zoning districts where other business uses are not allowed by right. I think that was the intention of adding that to the ordinance, was thinking of it as a business. And I think the commentary at that meeting was a special use review is required for a beauty salon operated out of a home that just has one chair in it. And so they would like to see similar special use for short-term rentals as a business. And so it doesn't open it up to, one neighbor being able to veto it. It's still a public hearing by the planning commission and decision by the board.
Yes.
So in the application, it's actually pretty prescriptive that in the special use review application is pretty prescriptive. These are the criteria that the planning commission and the board of trustees have to follow. These are long codified things. It's not, it's not like one property owner could just be adamantly against it. As long as it meets those criteria, because it is a quasi judicial hearing, it has to be approved. So it's that way of protecting property rights, but that's a long established process that not only is in our code, but it's also in state statute for certain criteria.
So I guess my point is I hear you all. I don't disagree with you at all. But I'm very skeptical of going back completely to the drawing board, given all the work and input that has gone into this over years. I would like to see it go to the voters.
Trustee Heck, any thoughts you'd like to put in?
Remember, I was one of the people who voted no on the whole thing anyway, so. I guess I felt bad about removing the grandfather thing. I mean, we sold them, the licenses in good faith, and there would have been money spent on the houses. It's just bad business to, whim of a board. I'd kill it or redo, personally. I'd second your thing. So,
well, I was thinking it only needs some slight modification and then brought back for public comment. For instance, the grandfathering in, maybe differentiating between room rentals and short-term rental separate units. Yes.
I'd be willing to compromise, I would have grandfathered, maybe put it on no, they can't transfer that lease. When they leave, it's gone. And you could maybe do a seasonal, just a certain season. That's when the rentals are high for worth doing. Nobody wants to be here now.
I do wanted to clarify, there's a couple of things. One, as it stands right now, any ordinance that's passed has to be published in its entirety. We incurred a cost of a little over, it was like $9,000, $7,800 to $9,000 for publishing this ordinance. And so if we were to do that again, we'd have to go through that process.
Cheaper though.
Possibly cheaper.
Well, for modifying.
And then there was one other point that about attrition. So you had brought up a point where if the property sells or transfers,
it goes away. That's what's in the current ordinance as it stands. So it's already in there.
Well, it's my understanding that the ordinance could be modified then at some time by the board. So if there is a clause about grandfathering in or making it more clear about the 36-inch door openings or the number of licenses that we may issue, that can be modified after the ordinance is taken effect.
It could. So the normal way of amending any ordinance is that a trustee would take it upon themselves to introduce it because they've heard from their constituents, right? So, I mean, that's how a representative democracy works. And so if you wanted to have an amendment to that ordinance, you would have heard from somebody and brought something up.
So we're well past that.
We are, because there is a verified petition, right? So a decision does need it.
That's good for future. Trustee Schwartz?
Yeah, so, as a council, like, we are tasked with making some really difficult decisions. And I've been in this room where it's completely the opposite take. And so, like, I think of, like, we all have to sort of balance, like, what's good for the whole. And unfortunately with compromise, like, there's obviously a contingent of people who are like overstretch, overreach, not happy. There's also a contingent of people who think we didn't go far enough in our regulations. And somewhere, I think we have to strike this middle path, and no one's going to be happy. And what's going to happen is you're going to have petitions to repeal, et cetera, et cetera. So if I have to just think about what is this middle path, for me, repealing is not an option. I do think we need to put this to the voters. If we repeal and we go back to the drawing board, we're taking a major step backwards. If the voters really are in favor that they don't want any regulations, then that's the message that we will hear. But that's not the message that we have been getting consistently. Like, we really have been getting a lot of feedback that people want regulations. They want to have a fair system in place. They want to have limits. And I think we have to address long-term rentals in the housing study. This is just one piece of it, but it is a piece of it. And we know that eventually we'll look at ADUs, depending on the water moratorium, public-private partnerships. There's a lot of different things, but we as a council have to take action. And I don't want to be part of a council that doesn't take action, and nobody's going to be happy with it. I mean, you hope so, but you're just doing your best. We're all just doing our best up here. So I'm definitely not in favor of repealing, and I think we take it to the voters.
Is anyone ready for a motion, or you want to continue? And Trustee Valentine, did you want to weigh in?
He has his hand.
Oh, he does. Oh, good, I didn't see that.
I wanted to agree with Trustee Hunter and Trustee Schwartz. It would be a big step backward to start over again. The only thing I would add is that way back in the beginning of this whole process, one of the drivers of the process was housing costs and affordable housing. And we didn't hear the stories of the people who couldn't afford a house and moved on, or can't work here, can't live here. And so we heard some narratives from STR owners, but didn't hear the other side. And I think we have to remember that that was, a very important part of this. The incentive to do this process. We need to put it in front of the voters. That's enough said. We need to move on. I agree with putting it in front of the voters.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Are you ready to make a motion? Oh, hang on.
So just Trustee Hunter brought up adding a question to the ballot.
any additional ballot language could be approved at the second meeting this month. She would certify the ballot on the 31st, January 31st. Our next meeting is January 28th. In case you do want to add additional questions. And when we do go for a vote, either way, please pause for roll call vote. I think it's important that we have a roll call on this one.
Could I just ask for clarification? We have two resolutions in front of us tonight associated with this. If the vote goes to it going to the voters, do we have to approve both of these resolutions tonight? Or can one wait until the next meeting if the thought is to add ballot language? I'm quite confused.
I have 3 dots. Hang on one second.
Okay.
And may I ask who's answering?
Our clerk.
Okay, thank you.
She, talking with you earlier today, she has her voice is going kind of on. So, so both are only, she's saying that both are only about this ordinance. Again, 3 dots.
Okay.
So they can be done tonight.
They should be done tonight. And if there were to be additional ballot language added, that would be another resolution.
On the 28th.
Yep, that we could do a separate resolution associated with that ballot. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. So with that, I don't think we had a motion yet, did we?
The other comment I have was, I thought this resolution was 95% there. And I thought if we took into account the few things that were brought up about, for instance, grandfathering in existing short-term rentals, or clarifying some of the language like the door width, that's the only thing that needed to be fixed. So I didn't think it was really starting over from scratch. But if we can handle that with, except that seems hard to do with putting it on a referendum to say, well, if we change this term and that term, is it okay with you guys then? So, yeah, that's what the question was, about changing it from 30 limit to 40 or something.
No, at this point, there's nothing we can do. It's either they got the signatures, it's either repeal it tonight or it goes to the voters.
Okay.
That's the only choice. There is no wordsmithing to be had. So that could be later, depending on how life throws things. But for now, this is the choice.
So I guess I didn't understand the comment about changing the ballot language.
No, that was trustee Hunter.
Yeah, I'm sorry, if you want to add additional ballot questions aside from this one, you have until the next meeting.
Then that was a misunderstanding.
Right. My understanding is that the statute says, once you've received a verified petition, you shall promptly hear it and decide. So.
Yep. Okay. Okay.
I move to approve resolution 03-2025, authorizing the special election. And approve resolution 04-2025, setting the special election ballot question.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Roll call.
Oh, yeah. Well, hang on. Oh, okay, does anybody want any more discussion? Are you ready to vote? Hearing none, okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Valentine,
Aye.
Trustee Check.
Nay.
Oh, wait, your head, check. Check, I mean, you just tell the light. I had to go, wait, what?
I'll vote aye.
Whose loss was that?
That's what you had. That was a nay for you?
Trustee Heck.
And that now it's me? Yes. Hunter
Aye.
and Trustee Schwartz.
Aye.
Motion carries.
What did trustee Check vote?
I wrote aye.
Okay.
Okay, that motion carries.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to, we have several more. Yes?
I do want to clarify
Okay.
if we need to take up the resolution that was also presented as 04-2025.
That was included.
That was
Oh, you did,
included,
okay.
yep. They both were in the
I
motion.
didn't catch the motion.
So now moving on to item number 6, consideration of bid recommendation for the 2 million gallon tank rehab site civil work.
Vicky, you want to take it?
Well, just like you did increase the time.
You have 15 minutes, so.
Oh,
Yeah.
we, how do you want to make, let's see, wait, hang on one second, let's just, and if you're gonna speak to that, do you mind coming up here if, because it's hard to hear you down there? Anyway, but hang on. Hang on. We have 1, 2. All right, would somebody like to make a motion to extend the meeting maybe to 9:45?
I make a motion to extend the meeting to 9:45.
I'll second that.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now all right. That was you saying that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. And you had something?
Excuse me. Yeah, so I'll, if you want, I can take this next one, the recommendation.
Sure. Yes.
In an ongoing effort to keep our employees, train our employees, Nikki has taken this one as well, made the staff report, and has done a phenomenal job. But this is the bid recommendation for the 2 million gallon tank rehab site civil work. So this is the property that we've already procured from the Rovers. This is the site civil work to make it level, to prepare us for the temporary tank that needs to be installed. And in a future phase of our water capital improvement plan, add a new finished water storage tank.
Second.
A second one, yes. Our bids came back. We had SGM, the company that, our engineering firm that designed the water tank rehabilitation project, that also reviewed bids, and the bids came back where they do have a recommendation that they, being Public Works and SGM, they say they don't have a preference. However, they have Earthworks Excavation LLC being the lowest, most responsive bidder, with a bid price of $336,278.15, which we have budgeted.
Questions? Trustee Schwartz?
Nikki, is there anything you want to add?
No.
She deferred me. I will say, we had, how many contractors that were interested in this project?
There was about, I want to say 12 that showed up total.
To the mandatory meeting, this is great for us, right? We have very competitive, bids.
Did you get 12 bids? No. Or you got 3?
We got 3?
Yeah.
But you disqualified something, didn't you?
There was one that came in.
that came in late.
So we have to disqualify.
But only 3 came in.
I have a question. Why would one company charge almost $100,000 for item number 1? When
that mobilization?
Yeah, so.
mobilization and demobilization,
Distance from the site.
are they in Phoenix? Phoenix Industries? That's what I wondered.
Steamboat, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we take them that much? Wow.
It's a lot of heavy equipment.
Yeah, okay, that was my question of, wow, what a difference.
But Earthworks is Junction? Montrose. So,
And it's Hazel.
Ronnie Roop's here, so his boat fee's always the least.
Any other questions from the trustees? Anybody in the audience? Anybody online? Okay. With that, yes, trustee Hunter.
I'll move to approve bid from Earthworks Excavation LLC in the amount of $336,278.15.
For being the lowest responsible bidder.
For being the lowest responsible bidder.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay.
In my experience, that's really important. If there's anybody that contests the bids, so. Yeah.
And let's see, consideration of appointing town administrator Wynn as proxy for the North Fork Farmers Ditch Association and the Stewart Ditch and Reservoir Company annual meetings.
I did this last year for Stewart, I think, and I couldn't make the Farmer's Ditch, and Corey did, let me see the time again. The date. Okay, I can do that one. Last year was at the Indy 500 time, and I'm like, I can't do that. This one, I represented us before.
And do we have the proxy for Stewart Ditch in here?
Was it Stewart or was it
Yeah, you
North Fork
do. You have
Farmers and
both.
Stewart?
They're both there. Any discussion?
This is also my chance to meet our ditch companies. I didn't get to meet the Farmer's Ditch. Farmer's Ditch is the one that goes by our wastewater plants. So it'd be good to meet with them.
Yeah, find out when you're there, find out if they're gonna finish that pipe.
That's what I'm sure they'll budget for it. I don't know if
Who knows?
I move to make town administrator Wynn our proxy for the farmers ditch meeting and the Stewart ditch meeting.
We have a second. Okay, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And we have item number 8, which is the appointment of a citizen member to the Planning Commission. And we have a letter of interest from Mary Bachler. And I make the decision. But I'm, obviously open to any discussion.
if I may offer something through the beginning, I'm sorry, if I may.
No, of course.
I jumped the gun. Ms. Backren was very much involved on the planning commission while we started our comprehensive planning process. And then when she turned or decided not to run again for election, obviously she was off of the planning commission. So she has a pretty intimate knowledge of where we are with the comp plan, how we got to where we are with the comp plan. I think she'd be a great addition.
Thank you.
I agree with that sentiment.
Okay, any comments from the audience? Hearing none, can I make a motion, or I can just say I appoint? I don't make a motion, do I? No, I can't. I just appoint. I appoint Mary Backren to the planning commission. Thank you.
Sure, ready for some fun.
Next meeting is the end of the month. Actually.
29th, right?
Work session on the
29th, yep. And our last topic, consideration of, this is kind of a good one, but consideration of how best to consistently convey town information, accomplishments, and progress to the public. This is from Trustee Schwartz and myself. And it was initiated by Trustee Schwartz's exclamation about how wonderful this last budget was and how understandable it was, and we need a way to get to the public what the budget is, what's in it. Here's how you read it. It's really good. And for me, it went a little further that I think we have so many good things going on in town. You just heard through our the geohydrology study, the money that we're getting to fix the water system, that our public works was out at 2 a.m. on 2nd Street fixing a water leak. It was cold, they were wet. Those kind of things need to be out in public in a routine way. Good news needs to go out. So this is our discussion really with the trustees and the public and the staff is what are some good, and Marty, you could help us too, some good ways to get good information out. I'm familiar with press releases, but I know there's other ways. So we really just wanted to put this there so we could initiate the good news. I don't know. Good news. So discussion. And Trustee Schwartz, would you like to add anything since I?
Yeah, and I think it's not only sharing the good news, it's like, I want to have just a more direct connection with the public. Like here, it's like, there's like there's space between us. And for better or worse, it's like, how do we just engage more And so we share the good news. We have these conversations and in a bit more formal way. And as much as I hate Facebook and the damage that it does to communities, is there a way that we can leverage that? You know, I feel like we're being as transparent as we possibly can with our meetings. They're online, but so, you know, the newspaper, the media, everyone's trying to get the word out, but somehow there's a disconnect. And I'm not sure how we can bridge that gap. So I appreciate Mayor Smith bringing this up to feel like, how can we really just start to engage with the public more? Because there is so much good stuff happening. We have an incredible staff. We're strong. We're taking on big, hard projects. And yeah, how do we engage them more? So I don't have the answers, but I think it's going to be through a multitude of ways, including press releases, coffee with trustees, etc. Yeah.
Yes.
I know my reports are incredibly dense, so there's a lot of information in there, but parsing things out.
There's a press release right there.
Still very dense.
No, but it just, the parts are there.
Yeah, yeah. And we do have a staff member who's well versed in this. She just became full-time, so we may start utilizing her more. Come to find out, she also has a penchant for designing. It's not you, Nikki, it's Morgan. A penchant for designing like not memes, but posts and things. So that's a resource that we now have as of the first year.
Trustee Hunter.
I mean, I was just gonna say, as much as I dislike the whole Facebook thing, I feel like that's where a lot of misinformation and negative comments come from. And so I think it would be really good to put positive comments and accomplishments in that forum, because that's where I see a lot of like, we're just not doing anything. We're not fixing the water problem. We're not fixing the roads. We're not fixing the sidewalks. We've got all these projects on the board. Like, yeah. I don't have the answers, and I think it's going to be a combination, just like everybody has said, but I would like to see it on Facebook.
If I may, you haven't seen it yet, but what you have, a new payment gateway also allows us to send messages out to emails. As you sign up with the payment gateway, we collect your email, and we can send messages out that way as well, on top of TextMyGov.
TextMyGov is an incredible resource.
That's true. That's a good point.
But I didn't know that. So that's wonderful.
You can send out marketing campaign emails.
So there's another vehicle.
That's coming in February.
And it also does it do digital bills too?
Yes. And your usage.
I just did use it.
And your history.
Oh, that's right. That's
It's a new Easy Pay.
Well, to the idea of using Facebook, I think it's, I know a lot of people that they think it's toxic, wouldn't even read anything there. And so I think to rely on that to get messages to the public, it might be one avenue, but I think there has to be, maybe a weekly announcement on KDNet or something in the shop, or that is just a press release. I think that's a good idea too. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be a lot, but just something that we're working on this, or the town has accomplished such and such, so.
And hang on one second, and then I'll get the public. Kathy.
I think like, what I think about, like, if we're reaching different audiences, it's like, yes, we're gonna have the press releases, your staff reports more in depth. And we also, the thing I think we don't do well is these little short snippets, these little blurbs, these little videos of sidewalk people sanding the things, and that's where it's like, if there's like, we have staff time for that, like, that's awesome. And because it's so much of it is like, we're just like, staff is just doing, and how do we take that step back so that they can just talk about it? And I love the idea of like what you were talking about, Ruben, like, but I think that we have to do some things that are just like little bite-sized little chunks.
Headline on the town website, and it doesn't have to be more than a paragraph of, this is what we've accomplished this last week. just a blurb about where we are in various projects.
If I may. So it sounds like we've done a strategic plan, we've done a capital improvement plan, we have a budget. What we don't have is a marketing plan, right? And so perhaps that's something that we can put together, present to you. Because I just learned today that we can do digital messaging through our new digital billing system. So those might be avenues that we could put together into an actual marketing plan that goes for your consideration.
Let me put it out. I know Mary, you want to speak.
Yeah, so my kids are hooked into digital stuff because they're of age. But Twitter and Tumblr, bite-sized things. Tumblr is where all the positive people are going right now. So putting it out on Tumblr could be a really good thing. The other thing is Lisa Young. She does the KVNF news every, I don't know how many times a week, but I've had a good relationship with her as mayor. And so she would be a good person to get in touch with and just feed stuff to, and she'll stick it in the news report. So that would be another way to do it too.
Marty, please. I would recommend some face-to-face thing. I think all these are good ideas, but that's what we're missing in general is face-to-face communication in a non-formal setting. So it isn't beep, beep, your 3 minutes is up, but the coffee, the cake, the cookies are, every something or other, maybe every month or something. And just do it in here and attempt to have a little party. It doesn't even have to be somebody standing up and saying something to a group, but mix and mingling, because, I like you a lot better in person than maybe that would be, it's just something that we don't have very much of, even in our tiny town. Yeah. Just glad. Yeah.
Thank you. Suzanne?
When I hear this kind of thing, I think you're like working too hard. To me, it's kind of sounding like propaganda. It's like only positive comments are allowed, and the only people who are welcome are on happy pills. And it makes me feel uncomfortable when our government just starts trying to emphasize the positive things, because people can feel very left out by that. And I just want to let you know, it's kind of phony sounding to me. It's just like those signs on the wall, just like these gratuities or whatever you did at the beginning. Only people with positive comments can participate. And I think there's something a little chilling about that, because that's where dictatorships go. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we have two members and anyone online. Yes, and Nikki.
I just wanted to say, you don't want to celebrate? Yeah. All right, it's official. Please. Okay. I'm Nikki, I'm the Deputy Director of Public Works. I live out of town. But we've kind of discussed, I know Facebook can be toxic. If Public Works had an official page, kind of like PD does, and you remove the comments. So we're only putting out, you can message us, but not comment. So somebody could be, water break here, I don't have this or that, but it's not a comment, it's not a running stream of things. We thought about that, we've talked about that quite a bit. Yeah, so that was the way we were thinking of throwing it out there as well.
Thank you, yes.
If I may offer, having multiple Facebook pages is really hard to manage, but giving access to the Facebook page, it's really easy to do. I think delineating this to some sort of a plan that comes before you. It would also have what would be our accepted logo, what would be our accepted color schemes, things like that.
Which is in the master plan.
There you go. Would be, I think, beneficial.
Are you suggesting changing the logo?
No.
Oh, good, good. It's like, we have all these great hats. I was hoping that's not what you meant.
That is so far anywhere, not even
Good.
on a radar.
I wasn't sure what you meant. So it sounds like you're willing to work with staff to maybe come up with another type of plan for consideration. To bring back to the trustees?
Yeah, yes. Yes.
I don't know that we need a motion for that necessarily.
I'll add it to our departmental scorecard.
Yeah.
I've been removing things, so we've been accomplishing things too.
Talk to me afterwards. Okay. Or one of us afterwards, Marty. I think we will not have to go till 9:45. And I will adjourn this meeting. Uh-oh, wait. You look like you're saying you want
No, I was waiting for you to adjourn it.
Oh, where? Okay.